All right.
He asked.
We're gonna go. We're gonna go live on YouTube here. Here we go.
Okay.
Hello, YouTube. How y'all doing tonight? Happy Canada Day to all of my fellow Canadians. I love you, and thank you for helping make this country just absolutely wonderful as we are 100 and what are we? 153 years old? I think 153. It's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. And, if you're like me, you stayed inside all day because it was damn well raining since 1 o'clock this morning. But I did have my flag out, gave it a couple of waves, and gave a couple of fist pumps for being Canadian, and that was that. Anyways, hope you had a great time. To all our American friends, I hope you guys are getting ready for a wonderful 4th of July weekend. We have just a power show tonight, everyone. A power show. And hold on, my little guy is, I think, FaceTiming me. Hello?
What are you doing?
Daddy is working. What are you doing?
Hello.
You want to say hello to everybody in radio on YouTube?
Sure.
Say hello.
Hello.
Anyways, that's my little guy. Daddy's got to go, buddy. You have a good night and good night, okay? I love you.
Bye.
Bye. Sorry about that. That's my little guy. Anyways, let's give a shout out to everybody who's in our chat room so far. Waylon, Mary, Paradoxine, Jules, Middle Child, the lovely and talented Kira, Brett Lewis, the Brett Lewis. Who else we got here? Millennium's here. Susan B. The solidness of Mr. Apnea. He is wide awake tonight. Helena, you're looking stunning this evening. Nate Rudd, you got Bigfoot feet. Yes, you do. Rory, welcome to our chat room for the first time. Thank you so much. Triple M, good to have you back. Little Davey Altman is here, everybody. Little Davey Altman from UAPX. The Stu Gerson is here. Martin, welcome to Spaced Out Radio's chat room. Really appreciate that. Philip Blair, thank you for coming back. Gary the Spudger. Don't mess with Gary the Spudger. The gorgeous Marie is back. Little Debbie, thank you for coming on in. Who else we got? Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, are we on at the bar tonight? That's what I need to know. Are we on at the bar? Is the drinking game on? Cable Guy Matt, everybody. Cable Guy Matt's here. Remember, you can get your own piece of autographed coaxial cable, courtesy of Cable Guy Matt. You cannot buy these in stores. Limit one per household. We are down to 15,000 of them left. Hey, Justin, thank you for coming on in. Jason, SJ, good to have you here. OK, Lufon, great to have you back. Hi, Maureen, Big Cat, Jim Christie, always a pleasure. I think I'm caught up now. Fapster, Chris Jarvis, good to have you back, man. All right. Joe Murgia is here, everyone. Joe Murgia, he put himself on camera here on Skype. I'm going to tell you right now, Joe has fantastic hair. Absolutely stunning hair. You guys would be proud of that. And I'll tell you, we're going to get into some serious UFO stuff tonight. And we are all going to be on the learning side of these Admiral Wilson files, what the government is covering up. This is huge, everybody. Huge tonight. Hey, Andrew Hall, welcome to Spaced Out Radio's chat room. I know you just added me on Twitter a couple of days ago. We followed you back. Thank you so much. Jason McDaniel, thanks for coming on in. Anthony Foster, good to have you here from Rochester, New York. Thank you for joining us, man, and staying up late. Fapster, much love to you, and Grandma Rose, buddy. I hope Grandma Rose is doing well. YTFP Chris, thank you for coming on in. How you doing, Joe?
I am doing great, Dave. I never thought you would invite me on the show, and today is it's a magical day.
Oh, you're making me blush, man. You're making me blush.
And my hair is since I haven't had a haircut since the lockdown, which I could get a cut. I have not. It's bigger than when I was 15 in my confirmation. Beautiful. And it was big back then. So yeah,
I'm happy with this. I'm very happy with this today, man. And you know what? Having you here, I gotta. You know what? I'm gonna save what I'm gonna say until the beginning of the show after I introduce you. But
okay, yeah,
I'm going to save that because, there's certain things that sometimes I want the world to know, and I want the world to know this, man. I want the world to know this. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. For some reason, she always needs me to say it 3 times. It's weird. Weird. Anyways, we're about 30 seconds away. We have the super chat open tonight. Remember, a great way to support what we do on this show. Give us a thumbs up. Hit that wriggling bell thing. I don't know what it does, but hit it anyways. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Go to our website, spacedoutradio.com. Join the Space Travelers Club. It's just $5 a month. And of course, let's get this out. And of course, we have the SOR space, our SOR vault, which is where you can buy any type of spaced out radio swag. Here we go, everyone. Music is on. We're about to have some fun. It's all aliens, all UFOs, all conspiracy, and a night of great hair on Spaced Out Radio. Hi, beautiful Teresa. Good to have you back. Here we go, everyone. Let's do this thing. From atop the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, including all of our terrestrial affiliates across North America and digitally on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. If you want to take a listen to our archives, they are free for you at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio for the show and our Instagram page at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire and much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And in the UFO world right now, our guest is fanning the flames when it comes to what could be one of the biggest stories to crack open the UFO files. Freelance blogger Joe Murgia has been interested in the UFO phenomena ever since reading the one book I have never finished, Communion by Whitley Strieber, back in 1996. It sent him down a paranormal rabbit hole in which he now resides. His blog, ufojoe.net, is where he focuses on the latest information about UFOs, ATIP, TTSA, and related paranormal subjects. But for now, Joe has been making big-time news about the information he has learned about the secretive Wilson files. What are they? Why are they important? We'll find out tonight. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, I will bring you the SOR Newswire, brought to you by Paranoia Magazine. Joe Murgia, first time having you on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
I am great, Dave, and I am excited to be here. I've been wanting to be on your show a long time, and very excited to see what we talk about.
You know what? I'm going to start this off with, I owe you an apology. And I'm going to tell you why. All right? For a long time, when I started seeing your name come up in UFO talk, you and I had a few battles on Twitter, and I'm going to tell you, man, it grated me. And I thought, what a jerk this guy is. What an ego. I can't say the word, what I did say. And I got to tell you, man, I'm man enough to admit I was wrong. I was completely wrong, and I think that you are a brilliant researcher, and for the last number of months, I kind of kicked back in November, I kind of stepped away from UFO Twitter and just watched. I didn't want to participate in it because there's a lot of drama on there, but I watched you, and I watched Danny Sylvan, I watched a couple other people on there, man, and it wasn't you who needed to grow up, it was me who needed to grow up, and I owe you that apology publicly because you're one hell of a guy. You're a fantastic researcher, and I'm absolutely proud to have you on this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Dave. And I have a tendency to get a little carried away on Twitter, so I'm sure I said some things to you that I shouldn't have said, but I appreciate the apology. And I've never called myself a researcher. I'm like somebody who just collects information. Although on the Wilson Davis stuff, I have definitely done some research and some interviews. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I'm proud of what I was able to get.
Let's go back to 1996. You read Communion, and it screws you up because this opens your eyes to a whole new world you didn't expect. Do you remember the part where Whitley Strieber is talking about being on the spaceship and he looks to the side of him, and his son is right there, and it freaked him out. Do you remember that part?
I barely remember it. I don't. It's been a while. I read it once in '96, and I started reading that book, and I got scared. I had no idea what that book was about. It was
Me too.
my first wife. My first wife, who I was pursuing at the time, she brought up this book. She goes, "My aunt had this experience with this being." I'm like, and I don't remember how UFOs came up, but she says, I go, what kind of being? She goes, "It's on the cover of that book, Communion." So I bought it because I wanted to have something in common with her. I read it. I'm like, this is really scary. I am not reading it. So I put it down. And that night I woke up on my couch. I was scared. So I slept on the couch, left the lights on, and eventually shut them off. And then at like 3 a.m, I woke up and I couldn't move. So I was paralyzed, which was probably sleep paralysis, but I was scared. I was like, what is going on? It's the first time I ever had it. So the next day I'm like, you know what? I think that's a sign for me to finish reading that book. And I did. And I'm like, there's a lot of spirituality, metaphysics in here. This is really good. And then that was it. Rabbit hole time. I bought every book I could. Right. And I just read everything. And a lot of the books back then were channeled books, a lot of bad books, books with bad information. But back then I didn't have a filter. So if I read it, it was true. Although I did realize that the channeling books were so inconsistent with their information. I realized wherever they're getting their information, it's not accurate. It's just, you don't know what is accurate. It's inconsistent from book to book to book. And, along the years, one of the guys I worked with down in Tampa, that's where I was living, I would say UFOs are real. And he would say, what's your evidence? And I would never have a good response for him. I'm like, I believe they're real. And he's like, well, what's your evidence? And he forced me to go back and just really refine my debating skills. And that was a really important part of my life. And then over the years, I became more skeptical and more skeptical until I became just a nuts and bolts guy when I got on Twitter. And then now it's a little going back the other direction, which we can talk about later. Absolutely.
Well, the reason why I brought up that part is, in your bio where you mentioned communion, that part that I brought up about Whitley Strieber seeing his daughter or his son, I had just become a father like 4 months previous to this. And I got to that part, and I was so freaked out by the book that I figured all of a sudden my imagination was playing. And I was like, what would I do if here I am on a spaceship and I look down and my baby girl, who is now 21, is sitting right beside me? And you have no control over that. And to this date, that book is in a box in my storage room. It hasn't even made it to all of my UFO collection books, man, that are right behind me here in studio. But, I think that you are someone who is ripe for this debate about the Wilson files. And we're going to learn a lot about those tonight. But, Joe, after you read this communion book and you started learning about the subject, it's a quick rabbit hole to go down. For many people who have never edged close to that UFO rabbit hole, what's it like to fall off the edge?
It was an obsession. I mean, I bought all these books. I booked a 3-day stay at the beach, and I just went by myself, and I just read. I read. And actually, when people say, "Have you ever seen a UFO?" That 3-day stay at the beach down in Florida, I slept on the beach till like 3 a.m, and I saw something over the water. It was a red light. I cannot say what it was. That would be the only time. But I was looking back then. I remember some of the things I believed, and it was ridiculous. I look back now, and I'm like, how did you believe that? And I would say some really stupid things. It was all related. It was related to channeled books. Specifically, do you know the channeled books Cryon?
I've heard of them.
He's a really popular channel. So it was related to that, some of the stuff in that book. So it was, and I didn't have anybody around me that was interested in any of this stuff. Kind of like now, nobody in the family. So back then, I actually was so obsessed. In 2000, I quit my job. I was working for the city of Tampa Television as a cameraman, editor, director. I was there for 8 years. I was 2 years away from a pension. And I had started my Open Mind newsletter, and I was loving doing that. It was the UFOs and paranormal, and it was via email. And I said, you know what? I don't want to work anymore. I want to do the newsletter. So I quit my job 2 years short of my pension and went into the newsletter full time and fell flat on my face. So yeah, that's how I got started back then.
Well, have you ever seen a UFO? Have you ever had an encounter?
The only time was at the beach, if that red light I saw over the water, but I don't know what that was. I cannot say it was a UFO. It didn't move at all. It was just right on the horizon.
So,
it was odd, but I don't know.
So, Joe, why believe in this? Why dedicate so much time in your personal life to trying to figure out this ultimate life mystery?
Why believe is because the evidence is overwhelming. There are craft coming from somewhere or maybe from here that are making these amazing maneuvers that we can't do, apparently. And as far as being obsessed with it, the way I actually went down that rabbit hole and just spent so much time on it, I don't know, because there's nobody in my family that basically I can't have a conversation with anybody in my family. So I have asked my parents if I was adopted. So yeah, I don't know why. Why me? And the other guy's like, oh, that's just no, I'm not interested in that. For me, it's the biggest question ever, and it's getting more important. The more I learn, the more important it gets. Back then, we're not alone. It's the big question. But now, if my latest crazy theory is correct, it's a bigger question. And if we're alone, it's what do these objects represent, and how have they influenced us over the years? That's kind of where I am now, and that's kind of where I started back then and went the other way, more conservative. And now I'm to the point where I'm getting criticized on Twitter when I talk about some of the stuff I'm thinking about, which I'm fine with the criticism. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I was criticized for the Wilson Davis documents and for saying a big newspaper, which we can get into, was doing a story on it. I mean, the criticism was strong, and I'm like, I don't care. I already know I know they're legit. I mean, I've talked to so many people about the story, so I was okay, But yeah, absolutely. So as far as my session, I don't know.
That brings up a good point because, when you were what Grant Cameron dubbed one of the young guns, the new faces coming in who's taking this research by storm and taking it to new levels that researchers who've been doing this for 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years have not been able to achieve. How have you been able to come on in and jump right into the midst of everything that is going on with success?
Well, I mean, I'm not a young gun. I'm 55. First of all, and I've been doing it for a long. I started the newsletter 97, so I had the newsletter going, and I did drop the ball back then. I had to go back into television. That's when I started doing freelance back in New York. So this is like a makeup for me. I spent 16 years just not doing what I said I was going to do. And, that always grated on me. I'm like, you really dropped the ball. You had a chance. If you would have stayed with it, you would have had so much success. You had subscribers that were willing to pay. So I was really down on myself. And over the years, I got bored with UFOs. It's like, all right, how many sightings can I read about? It's, we know about abductions, we know about sightings, but to me, it's like I would only pay attention to the big cases, like in 2000 with St. Louis, the Giant Triangle, and then, Phoenix in 97. So that's the only time I would focus. And then things changed when I heard about Tom DeLonge in 2000. It was either 16 or 17 when I first heard him speak. And my first impression was, this guy is full of it. That's what I thought. I had him on my Facebook. First post that come up, I'm like, all right, this is interesting. And then he's like, listen, I know stuff that other people don't know. I can't tell you about it. I'm like, all right, delete. I don't want to hear from this guy. And then I don't know when it was, maybe when the WikiLeaks stuff happened, that's when I started looking again. And I'm like, okay, there's something here. And then, the rest is history with Elizondo coming out public. I'm like, okay, he's got credible people behind him. And that's when I said, I'm going to get the blog going. I'm going to start a blog. And it took me a while before I was consistently posting stuff. And it wasn't until recently, till I started posting blogs a couple a week. I was really lazy getting stuff on there. And then all of a sudden last April, everything changed when the documents appeared on Reddit.
And there you go. That's how it all happened. That's how it all came down. And, you know, when it comes to UFOs, I mean, before these documents came out, you were very, very public about your support for the To the Stars Academy. And there's been a lot of controversy about people loving them, hating them, whatever it may be. You know, I'm trying to get myself more down the middle than I am of not supporting them. You're on the supporting side. You know, how much credit can we actually give to the Stars Academy for bringing this topic to the forefront? Because the one thing that I will say, and I've changed my tune on this, I don't think Marco Rubio has the gall to put in money or try and get money allotted for UAP research if it wasn't for people like Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo. I've changed my mind on that. What's your thoughts?
I support what they do. I bought $200 worth of stock in the beginning. Not that I expected to get rich off of that, but it just as a token of support of what they're trying to do. But I've criticized them over the years, and I've gotten, as soon as I criticize them, it's you're a hater, you're a TTSA hater. So and my criticisms have been minor, just little points here and there. But I think they have a lot to do with what's going on right now. But I don't think Marco Rubio, as much as Chris Mellon deserves credit, I think Marco Rubio did that because Marco Rubio knows what's coming. A lot of people in Congress know what's coming, and we'll talk about it later. The article that's coming is going to change everything, Dave. It's coming soon. Other outlets know about it. They're trying to get their stories now. They're scrambling. They didn't know about it for the longest time. I talked to other reporters, said, what do you think about the documents? And I was blown off. Like, it's nonsense. This is not how somebody speaks in the military. I'm like, have you read the documents? Have you read anything I've written? No. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days, that same person said, oh, here's my email, because I knew they had realized there's validity and there's a buzz going around. The New York Times is working on a story about crash retrievals of UFOs. That's why Marco Rubio, and that's why all the others are now saying we better get ahead of this. And I can't wait to see what happens. People are like, you're a little too excited. I'm like, I know the article is coming. I've spoken to more than enough people, and I've known for a while. So it's hard for me not to get excited, because this is everything we've been waiting for. Since '96, I've been waiting for new information. I did not, 2017 was great. We got the gimbal, the Tic Tac, the Go Fast. That was great. But this is crash retrieval. This is the New York Times. If they do the story, which if they get it published, that means they're confident enough that they had a couple of sources on the record. I really want to see who's in the article before I get too excited. But just the fact that they're doing the story, and maybe multiple stories, is the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing in the history of humanity. If they do a solid story on crash retrievals, it's going to take the whole world by storm. And I don't understand why everybody's not excited. I know a lot of people are like, well, we don't know if it's really coming. It's coming. Trust me, it's coming. I know it's weak for me to say, trust me, but I told some people last night or today on how that came about, why I know that they're interested. We could talk about it. We could talk about that if you want, how I found out.
Absolutely. And before we get to how you found that out, as we got about 5.5 minutes here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour, Joe Murgia, UFO Joe, is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Joe, it's one thing for the UFO field, those who've experienced, those who have a curiosity, whatever it may be. It's one thing for this story to jump out at them and for people like us to be excited about it. How do we get the mainstream people excited? Because for the rest of the UFO world, when it's gone into mainstream, people have turned the channels. It's been passé news. They really haven't paid attention. Yet this is, in my opinion, next to Jesus Christ himself coming down from the heavens, the biggest story in the history of mankind.
I've always asked myself, it's always been my goal to interact with mainstream folks about this subject, because as much as I love discussing it with people who are interested, the only way it spreads is if the mainstream crowd gets interested. So, a couple of years ago, I drove Uber for a month, and every chance I got, whenever I saw an opening, I would bring this subject up. And, it was surprising the amazing stories I got from people, not just UFO related, everything. I remember talking to a surgeon about all aspects of the paranormal. So you really can't force people to get interested. 2017 was a great start. The most read article on the Times. We had videos, we had fighter pilots, two things we need, and we need radar too. That's the beginning for mainstream. We need that. But if we can get crash retrieval and it's credible, that's going to spark a lot of interest in the mainstream. They'll start digging in, and hopefully with the Marco Rubio effort that Chris Mellon led, if they can get more videos released. People love videos, Dave. If they have videos and the pilots are able to talk about it openly, that's the first step, I think. And then I think it'll just grow and grow. It's still going to take time. It's not like overnight things are going to change. I get excited and I say stuff like the world is about to change. I do think the world is about to change, but it's still going to take a while for the masses, 8 billion people on this planet. But it's going to be shows like this and blogs like mine are going to be overwhelmed. I believe that's going to happen because people are going to be searching for answers, and it's going to build and build and build. And we're people that have been at this for a long time, and people are going to want to know our opinions. I know people get on my case because I speculate. I do speculate. I don't mind speculating, but with this subject, the people are like, well, where are they from? Why are they here? The only thing I can do is speculate because I don't know. I don't know any of that stuff. I mean, everything I speak about or tweet about their origins, their intentions, I have opinions, but that's all they are. So I think it's good what TTSA is doing, and next season it's going to bring people along slowly. They need to. Otherwise, if you just show them crash retrievals, it's going to be a big shock. And then if we get into why they're possibly here, that's something most people will not be able to handle. If what my opinion is at this point is true, that's going to be a big pill for people to swallow. It's going to be devastating for a lot of people.
Joe, we got 2.5 minutes left. You used the word sources a couple of times already this show, and that's part of the issue that many in the field of ufology do not understand. When you use sources, I'm okay with it because I'm a journalist. We use sources. We have to protect where the information is coming from in order to keep that information line flowing. Yet UFO Twitter has been very ruthless when it comes to protecting sources because anybody in their world can hide behind a source. So how do you defer that with information and getting your point across?
I don't really love the word source. There are people that I speak to, they're all different people. And some of my sources, I quote them, like Dr. Eric Davis. I quote him in some of my articles. I wrote an article about him. The way, I met him and I got quotes about Bob Lazar. That's how I met him. But there are other people that will give me quotes, and they're like, you can use this. And I know the person. I know that they've been recommended from somebody else. I look into them as much as I can. I think they're credible, and they say, you can use this. Here's some information. Or they'll give background information, and they'll say, you cannot use this, but you can use this, just for your background research. Just keep it in the back of your mind. The biggest challenge with that is I don't care. I really don't care what people think. If they think the sources are fake, that's fine. In the end, either my story is going to be accurate or not. And with this particular story, Wilson Davis, I think it's a very short matter of time. We're going to know either way. And we'll also know whether or not, the New York Times, people are like, well, that's not, you're saying it's coming. Well, whatever happens, it's going to happen soon. So for that stuff, it's going to happen. And then people could say, wow, your sources were right. And it's like, as far as the other stuff, the speculation, that's another thing. I don't have sources for that. That's just reading books and just trying to put pieces together and having an opinion. But I can't help if people get mad that I can't name. People want me to name sources and just tell them everything I know. I'm like, I am not doing that. I mean, my biggest problem is trying to make sure I don't say something that I was told in confidence, because there's so many people and there's so many things that, like, you can say this, you cannot say this, and that would be a disaster. Burning somebody or just letting out information
absolutely
that I shouldn't have said.
And people don't know, as we go to break here at the bottom of the hour, you're playing with people's livelihoods, the way they pay their bills, the way they keep their employment going, the way they get their paychecks, and you have to be careful with that. Joe Murgia on Spaced Out Radio. After this break, we're going to start getting into the Wilson files. What are they? For those who need an educational update, get your notepads ready, because we're about to go to UFO school with Joe Murgia. That's a good first half hour, Joe. Good first solid half hour, man.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, brother.
I didn't stumble too much.
Neither did I.
Now, Now, when we get to the documents, I don't know the documents by heart. Eventually, I will. I need to study them, but we can go over the basic points of the most important points.
Well, what I'm going to do is we're going to ask you right off the bat about the history of it, okay? And so kind of go back in time, so how you kind of learned about it, because the beautiful part about this is we have plenty of time for detail. So, let's take our people and our listeners who are going to be watching this now live and in the future. Let's take them on a little bit of a learning lesson, because I don't think I know the importance of them, you know the importance of them, but there's a lot of people out there who are still scratching your head saying, what the hell is this all about? Right. So, I mean, like Dave Altman, for instance, I mean, he went and got a tattoo of the Wilson files put on his lower right leg the other day. I mean,
oh, that could be my first tattoo. That's a good idea.
Absolutely. I say that with Dave in the YouTube chat.
Yeah. You know what happens? I get the tattoo, and then Eric Davis comes out and said, by the way, they're fake.
Mm-hmm. Well, then you could put the big fake news stamp on it afterwards. So that works too. I don't. That's all right. Well, when I show up in Vegas, dude, after we go for dinner, we're gonna go get tattooed, UFO tattoos.
I had a friend who got a tattoo. He was really drunk, and he called me at 3 a.m. and tried to get me to change his mind, and I didn't take his phone call. And he got this gigantic tattoo on his chest, and somebody had paid him $7,000 if he would do it. It was like a $7,000 dare, and he got it. And it took him, and then he was like, I gotta get rid of it. I can't keep it. So he spent, I don't know how many thousands to get it off.
Oh man, holy shit!
And it said Big Toots on it. I forget whoever's nickname it was that asked him to get it. I won't tell you who, because it's a person that people will know.
Oh, that's all right. Hey, couple questions that our YouTube chat we ask every guest behind the scenes. Your opinion on eating breakfast meals for dinner. What's your thoughts? Yay or nay?
Yay. I've had blueberry for dinner plenty of times.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. I can't be the only one. Me and Ron Murphy, the only ones. Don't eat breakfast for dinner. It's taboo, man.
Not usual. It's just occasionally, if I don't feel like making anything, it's just easy.
I don't know. All right. Second question. Going back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Devil's Tower. Is it a tree stump or is it a rock? Are you on Team Stump or Team Rock?
I would say rock.
Oh. 0 for 2, people.
0 for 2?
Well, in their minds, you're 1 for 1. Me, you're 0 for 2. Don't forget, you can get your Team Stump t-shirts at spacedoutradio.com right now. Right.
I just saw that movie last summer at an outdoor amphitheater with a live orchestra. It was amazing.
Oh, wow. Where was that?
It was great. It was right across the street from me in the Henderson Pavilion, which is turning into a hockey arena.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now,
the minor league team.
Did I ever tell you that I played in a hockey tournament in Vegas, like in 1994? And my team made it to the finals. The tournament stopped in the final. We were playing a team from like St. Paul, Alberta. Okay, a bunch of big Alberta boys. Now, if you've ever seen Alberta boys on skates, okay, they are like a small guy is like 5'11" off the ice, okay, and then he puts skates on.
Why are they big?
It's just the way they grow there. They grow hockey players there in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and they're all massive. Game ends with 7 minutes to go in the second period with a brawl. The referees had enough, skated off the ice right in the middle of Vegas at the hockey arena. The only hockey arena at that time was at this hotel that was way off the strip on the highway. It had, all I remember is it had a big bowling alley there too. And anyways, that's where we brawled right in Vegas to end a hockey tournament. And when the referees canceled it and said there is no winner, you both lose, everybody stopped fighting and started yelling at the refs. And then we all went for a beer because that's what Canadian guys do.
Was it at the Orleans Casino? Was it at a casino? Because they had
it was at a casino, but it was like way off the highway. I'm gonna say like off the strip, man. Even the old strip, like it was way
probably Orleans. Yeah, probably the Orleans because that's where the Wranglers played. We had a team there.
Yeah. Could be. Yeah, that was.
And
fun.
as your Canadian listeners, my favorite people to work for when I shoot Golden Knights hockey games or the Canadian crews. I mean, it's the best. I have the best time. I mean, I shot all of the playoffs in their inaugural season with all Canadian directors, and it was fantastic.
They kind of knew what they kind of knew what they were doing, eh?
Oh, knew what they were doing, laid back. It's Stanley Cup Finals. Old hat.
Absolutely. All right, my friends, here we go. Super Chat is open, and give us a thumbs up if you don't mind, if you're liking what you're hearing, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Here's the second half hour of the show coming up. Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host. Oh, maybe I should turn my mic on. How about that? Welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. We want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/spaced out radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rocket Out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. On Instagram, you can follow us at Spaced Out Radio Show, as well as on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. We're talking the Wilson files tonight. Joe Murgia is our guest. His website, ufojoe.net, where you can read his amazing blogs, his great research. I know he hates that word, but I'm going to use it anyways. And, this guy is right on top of things when it comes to these Wilson documents, and we're going to learn all about that starting right now. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be here.
Absolutely, my friend. We're glad to have you back. Now, Joe, I got to ask you, for people who may not know who Admiral Wilson is, let's start off by focusing on him. Who is he?
He was a Joint Chiefs of Staff J2, and I don't know exactly. I know when you're at that level, you're advising the president. There are a lot of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they advise the president and works in the Pentagon. And I can go into how I first heard his name, if you would like. So back in April or May of 97, I'm listening to the radio of the infamous Coast to Coast back then. It was Art Bell, late Art Bell.
Love him.
And Dr. Stephen Greer was on, and this was 97. So I'm not sure how I felt about Greer back then. Eventually I had a problem with a lot of what he would say, but back then I'm not sure. But anyway, he was talking to Art Bell and saying a lot of people, when they first hear about UFOs and they're legitimate and they're true, they have a reaction not unlike a, quote, Joint Chiefs of Staff fella that I briefed up in Washington about a month ago. So when I heard that, I'm like, Joint Chiefs of Staff? I mean, that's a really big deal. I mean, I don't know every position in the government, but I know somebody in the Pentagon who's a Joint Chiefs. I know that's a really high position. And he said that, they briefed him on information. It was Stephen Greer, his military advisor, Will Miller, Commander Will Miller, who's a very important part of the story. It was Stephen Lufkin, who's a supposed Eisenhower witness, who was controversial, so I really don't talk about him very much, and Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. So, they were there, and it was supposedly Wilson. It depends on who you talk to, if Wilson asked for the briefing or Miller set it up. Miller was the point guy. Will Miller had a sighting in 1970 in Vietnam in the Gulf of Tonkin when he was on a ship, and it was a USO. It started above the water, went underneath, and then just took off at a high rate of speed and went under the ship. So he had become interested in the subject, and then over the years, he would talk about it and let people know he was open about talking about it. And he briefed people starting in 1989, a lot of higher ups in the government who just didn't have information about it. You would think they would, but they didn't. They were kept in the dark. So if they were ever asked in it, they had plausible deniability. So if they were ever asked in front of a congressional panel, do you know about UFOs? And they would say no, and they would be telling the truth. But he would brief them privately. And one of the briefings was Admiral Wilson with Dr. Greer, and a lot of people have criticized Dr. Greer for calling it a briefing, and I have been one of those people, but recently saw a letter, which we can talk about later, from 1995, and Miller was writing to Wilson saying, if you would like a briefing with Dr. Greer and myself. So, Miller called it a briefing. So apologies to Dr. Greer for that. So they brief him and they give him all the information they have. And he's upset. He goes, I have no doubt all of this is true, but I'm horrified. I don't know about any of this stuff. And they also gave him a sheet that had code words on it for some of these programs. So they leave, and then he says he's going to look into it. He said this is a rogue group. This is illegal. And it was an NRO document, National Reconnaissance Organization document with the code words of the hidden UFO programs. So they leave and they give him time. And I think he took 45 days. He made various phone calls, and he finally found a program, but that doesn't come till later. We didn't know anything except he had been given information. That's all we knew from that interview. And then the first time Stephen Greer spoke about more was September 12th, 2001 in Portland. He was lecturing the day after 9/11, and he said Wilson tried to get into a black project, but he was told he did not have a need to know and was turned away, and he was horrified. So that's the first time we heard his name, and the first time we heard he was turned away. So I had only heard up until, the first part, and I forgot about it. So it was like 97, 2007, 2017, 22 years later, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a message from Giuliano Marenkovich, who's part of my article. I couldn't have written the article without him. He's like, guys, check this out. And I look, and it's these documents, 15 pages of notes, and I'm looking at it, and he's like, this is Admiral Wilson. You remember what Greer talked about in 97? I'm like, I do. I'm like, who would? And it's like Eric Davis is interviewing him in these notes, and it's in Vegas, 2002. And I'm like, oh my God. At that point, I had become friends with Dr. Eric Davis. So I knew right away. I'm like, okay. So I'm reading through the notes. I'm like, this is amazing. If this is accurate, this is incredible. This is what we heard about. We never heard the other end of the story. What happened to Wilson once he found these programs? We didn't hear any of those details. And in the notes, that's what this is. He tells Davis exactly what happened. And I don't know if you want to get into that right now, but that's the meat of the notes. That's the most important thing.
Joe Murgia is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Joe, this set of notes has some very high players involved. And for the most part, I learned about these documents in December after a conversation with Michael W. Hall and Grant Cameron regarding this. And then it was just a few months later where Richard Dolan did a fantastic job in breaking the story out and getting it out into the public, which really set everybody, chasing. Maybe not you, but the fact, because you were already in the know. But for a lot of people, it was the first time hearing this publicly. And this is where we heard the famous line, the leak of the century. Now, a lot of people blew that up, saying, this is going a little bit overboard. We can't confirm or deny these letters even exist at this time. Why were you so hot on the trail? What did you do when all of that started breaking out?
I watched, like everybody else, I watched Richard Dolan's amazing analysis, and people are like, he's blowing it out of proportion. I'm like, no, he's not. I'm like, I listened to what he said, and that was, I didn't have all that background information. A lot of the people and some of the details and notes I didn't understand. So listening to him, I'm like, okay. And he has his own sources too. So he had his opinions even before this. I mean, in 2000, I think it was 2006, he actually contacted Admiral Wilson and pretended he was doing some historical interview, and Wilson spoke to him, and then it was an ambush interview that Richard says he does not like to do. And I don't even like making the phone calls. I'm right there with him. But, this is such an important story. He did it, and he brought up the UFO question and the briefing that he supposedly had with Greer. And it ended, he admitted that he had the meeting because Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, out of respect for him, I wanted to at least listen to what they had to say. And I kind of remember it. And then Dolan pushed further, and basically he says, yeah, the meeting happened, but whatever else they say in the book, because he read him. Greer's book came out in 2006, I think. It was called Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge. That was the second time he named Wilson. And he talked more, basically he said, they gave Wilson code words, and he located a UFO-related program in a cell in the Pentagon, and they told him, sorry, sir, you do not have a need to know. And when Dolan brought that up, Wilson said, that's just a bunch of poppycock. It's one of my favorite lines ever in this story. So so after that, I watched Grant Cameron's videos, and I started digging on my own. I wrote right away, the documents came out on Reddit in April of 2019. And I think I sent the link to Eric Davis, and I was pretty sure he wouldn't be able to say anything, and he didn't. He might have said a couple of things like, yeah, I don't know where that came from. And then I said, well, just so you know, my friends and I, we realize this is sensitive, and I know you can't comment, but we're not going to post it anywhere. We thought about it like, oh, look, we can post this and get some notoriety and get some, publicity, but I'm friends with him. So for me, and he's not the only one I told this, I'm more worried about friendships on something like that. I'm not going to hurt somebody just to get the story and get the notoriety. So we waited and waited. So 2 months go by. All of a sudden they show up on Twitter. We're like, let's go. This is it. I emailed Eric Davis for a comment. He said, no comment. That's the first time. And I've spoken to him for, a year and a half. It's the first time he was ever at a loss of words. He writes me the best notes. He educates me so much on this field. It's unbelievable what he knows.
Right.
And a no comment from him. When he said no comment, I knew there was something there. And that's when I said, let's start digging.
Right.
I didn't start really digging until April of this year.
Okay. I got to stop you right there because, in a person in your position where you have built a relationship with Eric Davis over the years, who is one of the chief scientists involved in all of this type of research, when he all of a sudden hits the brakes and says no comment, that's a story on its own, is it not?
It is. And the way we met is interesting. He was on George Knapp's Facebook page, and it was right before Jeremy Corbell's documentary came out about Bob Lazar, and Davis was ripping into the documentary, and it hadn't even been released yet. So I'm like, how could you possibly be criticizing a documentary you haven't seen yet, Eric? And I didn't even know him at the time. So we went back and forth. I insulted him a little bit, but he didn't really insult me back. I'm like, all right, he's got some thick skin. That's good. And then he wrote to me privately, and I wound up writing as much as I could. I wrote a fair article on Bob Lazar, the pros and the cons. And the quote was from Eric at the top, say, Bob Lazar made up his cockamamie story. And so that's how it started. And then from that time up until the documents and the no comment, he was the most talkative person whenever he had time, when he wasn't busy with work. So yeah, it was definitely a story. And that's when I'm like, okay, it didn't prove it to me. I'm like, it's possible. We thought of all different angles. We went through it so many times. Even recently, Dave, I was questioning myself every day, back and forth, just asking questions. Somebody I spoke to said, well, that's how a journalist should do it. You should question everything. I'm like, yeah, I am. I said, because I'm not sure. Even though I have a lot of sources telling me, there are a lot of other people just giving me the negative side. And so I want to be careful. I don't want to look like an idiot, because I have done that before. I've spent time on a story. It was a football story, and it was related to a rape case in the NFL. And I spent so much time, and I came to a conclusion not about the rape case, it was about whether or not a team was going to select a certain player in the draft. And I was so convinced I was right. I was so convinced, just like this time and then it turned out I was wrong. So, and I got so much flack for it on Twitter. It's just, my phone started blowing up. I was devastated. It was the worst day ever. As far as this kind of stuff and the internet, it was the worst day I had. I remember I had my ex-wife shooting video of me. I said, shoot some video of me as I celebrate my accurate prediction. And then all of a sudden the draft happens. It's not the guy I said they were going to take. And I'm like, I put my head down. I said, shut the camera off, shut it off, and delete that video. So I had that in the back of my mind. So I'm like, is this going to happen? So every time I'm like, I'm really going out of ledge here. And if it happens, if I'm wrong, it's here we go again. I'll be out of the UFO business. If I'm wrong about this, I will be out of the UFO business. I'll just go back, just focus on hockey and reality shows. And so that was in the back of my mind always. But as time went on, I met more people and more people who I really trusted. And, and then George Knapp recently put out a public comment. He's known these guys, the NIDS guys, National Institute of Discovery Science, which Eric Davis was a part of. He's known all those people. He was around the time of when the notes were made. So he's like, I believe they're real. Just his word alone was a big part of it. But even today, I got information. And it's people say, well, you already knew they were real, so why do you care? I'm like, because it's always good to hear more. It's you read a text and you see who's sending you that text, and they're saying, I checked with so-and-so, and they're, well, it wasn't actually, that part wasn't about the notes. That was about the article coming out, because a lot of people have said there's no article. They've denied it. But the text I got today was saying, yeah, it's 100%. They're doing an article and they're closed. So we could talk about the article later. I just put I put so much time into it. In the last, 3 or 4 days, I was trying to beat the New York Times because I knew they were working on an article, and I wanted to have time where we could do stuff like this, because once their article comes out, they're going to be the focus for a while. So in my mind, I'm like, if you can get this article out before them, you can get some publicity. People could talk to you about it. You could do on some shows, and the last 3 or 4 days before I published, I just got more information. I was just more and more confident. And then I put it out, and the negativity I got was amazing. Some people never even said, hey, what can you share privately to convince me they're real? And I would have done that for some people who I know. I would have done that, but they never reached out. So I fought back, whatever criticism I got back, I was sarcastic, I was snarky, I wasn't going to put up with it. And that's when I was asked, how do you feel about that? I'm like, I have no problem with it, because I know I'm right about this specific stuff, because I trust the people who I've spoken to. It's not arrogance. I'm not an arrogant person. It's just confidence in the people I've spoken to. And there's no doubt in my mind, the documents are real. I can't prove that what was said to Davis by Wilson, what was told to Wilson by these people he encountered, they said about the program. I can't prove that. I do think he was told the correct information, but there's only one way to find out. We haven't got to that part of the story of what they have, but yeah, it's been a really exciting ride. I really enjoyed it, Dave. It's the most fun I've had since I've gotten into ufology.
And we got to be able to have some fun and some humor with this as well. And as you stated, there wasn't a lot of humor coming your way. But for, to look at the other side of things for a second, okay? And I'm even reading comments in our chat rooms that are going on right now. And, a lot of people are like, it's just a document. We don't know. Admiral Wilson has come out and said he did not make those comments. He doesn't know who Eric Davis is, and he doesn't know anything about the UFO subject. Leave him alone. And he's been very adamant about that in this statement that came out about a week and a half ago from him. Yet, if we play the other side of the ledger, he may be telling the truth. But if we play the other side of the ledger, Joe, it's basically like, of course he's going to say that. He has no choice but to say that, because there's NDAs involved. There's a lot of top secret information involved. What else can he say besides no comment? It just doesn't make sense, Joe.
The first line in my part 1 of my article says, I'm not sure if I'm quoting it exactly. It says, you're going to be lied to, because that's the rule. These guys are allowed to lie. If you ask them a question about one of these programs, a special access program or an unacknowledged special access program, they have to lie. They just can't say no comment. They need to deny it. They need to get the press or whoever asked them on a different angle, because they don't know, Dave. They don't know who they're talking to. It could be somebody who's Russian. It could be somebody who's Chinese. They don't know. They never know who they're talking to. If they get a phone call from a reporter, how do you know it's a reporter? You don't know who that person is. We're trying to keep secrets. If it's whatever the program, even if it's not about UFOs, some secret technology we have for warfare. And I'm not a war guy, but I'm just saying they don't know who they're talking to, so they have to deny it. And if they can throw them off the trail with a really good denial, that's what they need to do. And I have zero doubt Wilson was lying. And I don't say that, as I said, I think he had to do what he had to do. I don't hold any ill will towards anybody who lied. All the people who were contacted, most of them by Billy Cox, who's out of Sarasota, Florida. He's done some amazing work. They lied to him too, That's just what they have to do. I think I was lied to by one of the guys, a couple of people. So what? It's not, it's a dirty word. It's just them protecting themselves, protecting their NDAs, protecting their family. And there are people out there that said, well, they should say whatever this story is the biggest story in humanity. They should just break their NDAs. I'm like, I don't agree. I cannot judge somebody. That's up to them. Do I think if these people spoke about a UFO program, they would go to jail? No, I don't. I think the program is illegal. And Will Miller, who's part of the story, we haven't talked about too much. That was one of his opinions. If the program was illegal and it's unconstitutional and they speak out, he doesn't think the NDAs hold any weight. So,
Were you surprised by Wilson's comment, though?
I wasn't surprised, but his last comment, Billy Cox, first it was 2006, Dolan got the denial. I'm like, all right. The way Dolan described it, it sounds like he was caught off guard, and I didn't believe him. 2008, Billy Cox spoke to him, and it was like, maybe, I don't know. But then recently, Billy Cox got a hold of him again, and this is in the middle of my article. I spent so much time on the article. The Billy Cox interview with Admiral Wilson comes out, and Admiral Wilson is denying even meeting him. This is fiction. It was a really strong denial, and I'm like, oh my God, I just wasted all my time. This is nonsense. And I talked to Giuliano, and I'm like, he's like, I've been through the same thing over the past 2 years. It's up and down, up and down. It's legitimate. It's not legitimate. He goes, so then I met somebody, and somebody introduced me to somebody, and they talked me through certain things. And that's around the time when I found out about the New York Times. That's when we really got excited. It wasn't just the notes. The notes alone are not going to change anything. I can summarize the whole situation, put together a really good blog, but the New York Times has resources and credibility and influence on people to get them to talk. I don't have that. So once we were sure they were involved, that's where everything got knocked up a notch. That's when we really got excited. And even in the last couple of days, we've got excited. We get confirmation after confirmation. Oh, remember when we talked about that? Guess what I just got? Exactly what we talked about a month ago. So, I'm nervous. I wake up at 5:30 in the morning just waiting to see if the article has come out and see if anything is new. But I'm loving it, though. Like I said, the best time I've had in a long time.
We've got just over 90 seconds left before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Joe Murgia is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Joe, in regards to Eric Davis, and we're going to change topics, continue with the Wilson files after this, but go more in towards the New York Times article. But with Eric Davis, why is he such an important role in all of this?
First of all, he's the smartest person I've ever met. If I ever talk anything with physics with him, if I mention the subject, he starts going off into stuff that makes my eyes cross. And I have to say, you need to stop. Just stop. I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's learned to keep it really simple. I mean, he's gotten frustrated with me over the years. Like certain things I don't understand and some stuff I should understand. But he's been in this. I'm trying to think when he had a UFO sighting. It's in my blog. It talks about his UFO sighting. I think it was maybe 90s, late 80s. He saw a triangular craft with his wife. He was at a pool party. And then not too long after that, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, he got hired by Robert Bigelow to work for NDAs to investigate UFOs and everything paranormal. And he spent almost 6 years at Skinwalker Ranch. Here's an astrophysicist, brilliant man, there with Colin Kelleher, and they're investigating Skinwalker Ranch for 5, 6 years. And Eric Davis has some sort of intelligence take over his mind, freezes him in place, speaks to him, multiple male voices, and says, "We are watching you."
Oh, wow.
And that happened to him. And this is an astrophysicist with a really great reputation. You think he wanted to tell people that,
No.
But he did talk about it, though. That's what's great about him. And he doesn't make a big deal. He doesn't say, "Oh my God, this was so amazing." He just says, "This is what happened," and not a big deal. That was the beginning. And he's worked on the government UFO programs. He's spoken about ATIP as a subcontractor. Bigelow was the contractor, and he worked with Hal Puthoff at Earth Tech, and they worked on various aspects of that program.
Joe, hold on right there. We're going to continue with the Eric Davis talk and the potential New York Times article coming up with Joe Murgia here on Spaced Out Radio Hour 2 right after this. Stay tuned. 150 people in our YouTube chat for this so far, man. 150 people.
Nice.
You're close to breaking a record because I think all the Jimmy Church people come over after this one. So I think we may break a record tonight. This will be the second time this week we break a record. So
it's like the late night after hours bar, right?
I know. Hey, I'm just going to run, take my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay? Stay tight here.
Yep.
Great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi, this is Amber Beckrud, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we store all of the SOR show archives for free. And as an added bonus, every 2 weeks I'm posting brand new content on Cryptid Tales, where I will get into some of the spookier legends and folklore from around the world and tell the stories that go with them. Find us at youtube.com/spacedoutradio and check out Cryptid Tales today. Drop a comment and let me know what you want to hear. See you there.
Are you an experiencer of something strange that can't be explained? Do you want help finding out what's going on? I'm Ryan Stacy, head of the Experiencer Support Association, otherwise known as TESSA. We've teamed up with Spaced Out Radio to investigate cases filled out in the SOR Sightlines report. We are independent and there's no cost to what we do. All we need is your experience. Let's find out what's happening together on the SOR Sightlines report.
We all know on Spaced Out Radio we love a good beard and mustache, so why not take care of your facial hair with Mighty Moose Beard Oil? Made in Canada, we're taking care of beards and stashes around the world. We use 100% natural ingredients with our oils and balms to make your whiskers feel silky smooth. Use promo code SOR2019 at mightymoosebeard.com today.
Hey Space Travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners,
right,
either live during the show.
We've got just under 3 minutes. We got Sean Cahill in the chat room. We've got Grant Cameron in the chat room. We've got
I love those,
number of others.
Guys. We got some great people in this community, Sean and Grant, and I mean, I got so much information from Grant when he did his art, when he did his videos.
Oh yeah,
so helpful.
Oh yeah,
it's funny. You know, it's funny. I disagreed with Grant on certain stuff that now it's like I flipped on so much stuff. I'm like, you know what? I think they're right. I can't tell you how many times I've flipped in the past 2 weeks. And I have no problem saying, you know what, that was the wrong side. I think this is where it is, and who knows? I may be wrong again, but you know. Well,
we're gonna see. That's the beautiful part about it.
I'm not wrong. I mean, wrong about the intent. I'm not wrong about the notes or the article. I think that's a done deal. It's kind of boring. Not boring, but it's like there's really no excitement as far as whether or not they're real. The excitement is what's in the article, and then, you know, once we move on, people start getting interested. Let's talk about intention and why they're here. That's the stuff that's, it's total speculation based on just information trying to put together the story. And
yeah,
a lot of us disagree on, but none of us know. Nobody knows. The people that know, as other people have said, if people say they know, run away.
Oh, no worries. No worries. And let's be honest too here. I mean, on a whole serious realm, Sean Cahill probably has one of the most underrated beards in UFO TV right now. Very underrated beard.
I could grow a beard for 3 weeks and you would look like I have nothing on my face.
Oh, well, I'm just saying. All right. Hey, Frank, how you doing, man? Hey, Horror Realm, welcome back. We're having a good time here. We've got about 45 seconds left before we're going to go here.
You can ask me how I met Will Miller whenever. That's an interesting story. I wound up friends with two of the main people.
Well, we're going to we're going to finish up on the Eric Davis stuff, and then we'll get into Will Miller.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Yep. Thank you to everybody who is watching this tonight. If you don't mind, if you like what we do, we're here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday on YouTube Live, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight, or a little bit after that, because we kind of do an after show. And we do have the super chat open. Give us a like if you don't mind. Give us a hit that red subscribe button and that little bell thingy. And on our website, spacedoutradio.com, we also have the Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, as well as the SOR Vault. Pick up some Spaced Out Radio swag there. Here we go with hour 2.
Radio. And on Facebook,
Music's
Spaced
on.
Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates across the continent and on the digital side on Revolution Radio and TalkStream Live. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Krabilos. Krabilos is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Tonight we are talking about the Wilson documents. Are they real? Are they fake? Is there a lot of UFO news in them? Is this just the beginning? The man who is following this intently is our guest tonight, Joe Murgia. He's based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, the home that I want to have one day. His website is ufojoe.net. I highly suggest you stay in touch with what he is doing because he is on the ball these days. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. Having a great time.
Right before the break, you were talking about your relationship and getting to know Eric Davis and his involvement in the UFO field. It's pretty hefty. It's a pretty long resume. Why is he important to this entire Wilson document?
He brings so much credibility to this issue as an astrophysicist. He's obsessed with this. He's obsessed with the subject just like we are, except he's 10 times smarter than us. And he won't say that, but I mean, it's the most important part is over the years, he talks about in one of his interviews, I don't know if it was on Alejandro Rojas or with George Knapp, he talks about how he developed sources in various places he's worked where he'll have a clearance, but he won't have a need to know for a specific program. He'll meet somebody. They'll say, "Oh, you work on UFOs?" And they'll say, "Yeah." And they go, "Oh, well, maybe if you ever get the need to know, let me tell you some stuff." And they go into a skiff, a secure area, and they tell him stuff. And then, he collects stuff and he tells the story, not as if he's doing. He says, "That's how you collect the information." He's generic, but I'm assuming that's how he's collected his information. So when he talks about, the crash retrieval, the legacy crash retrieval program, the UAP crash retrieval program, he's basing it on the knowledge he's amassed over the years. The meeting with Wilson was just one way to collect that information, but he's met with a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure when you listen to him talk about, the programs, That's where he's getting his information. And we would not know that information. Nobody else speaks about it like that. I mean, no, he doesn't have I don't believe he's had firsthand knowledge of any of those programs, because if he had, he would not be able to talk about it. But learning about it in a skiff, Tom DeLonge has talked about the same thing where they were now, Tom DeLonge doesn't have clearances as far as I know, but, they took him into a skiff and they told him some things. And Eric Davis, at a higher level, that's how he builds up his information. So that's really important. I suspect he's going to be in the article in the New York Times since he's such a wealth of knowledge about crash retrievals, but I don't know that. He has not told me that. And he's just an amazing person. People criticize him. They're like, oh, sometimes he flies off the handle and he gets angry. I'm like, yeah, so what? It's a big deal. I mean, that's your only gripe with him? Come on. The guy he's the best thing that's happened to ufology in a long time. He's a brilliant guy with passion for the subject, and we couldn't ask for more.
The next gentleman I want to ask you about is Will Miller. This is a name that most people in ufology are not going to recognize or maybe even remember from the past, yet he plays a very serious role in this entire field. You got to know him. How did that happen?
So 2000, I'm living in Tampa, and a friend of mine had a public access show called UFOs and Metaphysics. Malcolm Hawthorne, he's in the article, and he's like, I have Will Miller on the show tonight. I'm like, yeah, who's Will Miller? And he told me, and I'm like, okay, I'll listen. He goes, he's really good. He's speaking at MUFON in Clearwater this weekend. So I listened from home. I should have went down to the studio, but I was too lazy. I just watched at home. And I wasn't able to go to the MUFON meeting because I worked. So I watched the show, and somebody gave me a copy of that show recently, and it turns out I actually called into the show, which I didn't remember. So Miller was the guest along with somebody from MUFON. It was mostly Miller. And he just talked about his experience in Vietnam, and then the same thing, talk about different programs. He spoke about the Pentagon briefings he had been doing since 1989. And then afterwards, I emailed him. I got the email from Malcolm, and then he became a subscriber with my newsletter that I started working on in the late 90s. So we would email him back and forth, and on that newsletter, I would talk about personal stuff, and then he would email me and talk about it. So we became friends over email. And then in 2007, I went to Florida. I think it was for a football game, and he invited me and my friend over. So he made dinner for us. And we did not talk UFOs, which was always a big problem for me. I looked back and said, why did you bring your friend who has no interest in UFOs and then not talk UFOs? So it was such a regret. I'm like, I could have learned a lot from him. And then as the years went by, I went back to LA where I was living, and we would exchange. He would send me messages. Hey, let's talk about UFOs sometime. And me, like an idiot, never even got back to him. And then when I saw in the notes, the third and fourth page is a letter from Will Miller to Eric Davis. And I was like, I know Will Miller. Oh my God. And so I read that it was him offering to help Eric and Hal Puthoff with various aspects, related to all of these subjects. So I saw that, and I wanted to reach out to him last year, and somebody else got to him, and he denied the letter. He said, that's a cut and paste job. I would never say that. And it was kind of a wishy-washy, denial about the letter. And I said, I'm not going to call him. I just don't want to pile on. He's probably stressed out at this time. So this year, before my article was done, like 3 days, I'm like, I need to reach out. So I spoke to James Iandoli, who's also knows Will Miller. I don't know where they met. Something related to CSETI with Dr. Greer. I said, hey, can you reach out to Will and just let him know I'd like to talk to him? And he did. So we did a Skype. And I did you let him know I want to talk to Wilson Davis? He's like, nope, I just told you I want to call. I'm like, okay, all right. So then Will and I talked, and it was great to see him. Older guy now, but he's doing great. And then towards the end, I'm like, Will, I'm working on a blog. He's like, about what? I'm like, what do you think? He's like, he just makes a face. I'm like, Wilson Davis. He's like, oh. I'm like, what are the chances I can actually talk to you about that? He's like, you know what? He goes, it was such a pain in the neck getting phone calls at the time. I really don't want to do that again. I'm like, well, let's just. He goes, I'll take it under consideration. And I'm like, let me just I'll email you some questions. I don't want to play gotcha, So I did. He said, just email me 2 questions. I'm like, 2 questions? What the heck am I going to do with 2 questions? So I'm like, what 2 questions can I ask him? And I got some advice. And then he emailed me back and said, you could just ask whatever you want. If I don't feel comfortable, I won't. And that was a separate blog, just that interview. And actually, no, it was part of the blog. And then I published the whole thing, and it's really good. And he has some questions in there he did not want to answer, but he had answered before. And if you read it closely, it's pretty much telling you, he's trying to give, I thought he was trying to give hints because, is your letter something you remember? And he's like, I said, here, are you prepared to say your letter is fake? He says, I have no recollection of that letter. Okay. Didn't deny it. And then I said, what parts of your letter are problematic or possibly cut and paste? Somebody made that letter up, like he said last year. And he said he did not want to answer. And then I said, can you elaborate on any parts of numbers 1 through 4 on page 2? And we can go through 1 through 4 if we have time. And once again, he said, I'm not willing to discuss that. So, and there's other things he said there where he didn't directly answer, and he's doing the best he can. I do consider him a friend, and, I don't want to burn him at all, but he's doing what he can to tell me as much as he can without going over the line. And like I said, he was a big part of briefing Admiral Wilson back in 1997, and then went on to talk to he broke the news to Edgar Mitchell, that Wilson we believe it was Miller that broke the news to Mitchell about the program, Wilson being shut out of the program. And if Miller doesn't talk about it, we may not know about it. Well, the notes eventually came out, but I'm happy that Greer started speaking. People if he broke trust, to him, it's such a big story for humanity. He's like, it's more important than breaking the trust. And Greer spoke about it. 2002 named him. And I know probably among the military and those people, that's a bad thing. But for us, Dave, this is the biggest story in the history of humanity. If somebody decides to break a trust, that's up to them. I will never tell anybody, you need to tell us. You need to break your oath. You need to break your bond. But if they do it, I understand. It's such an important story. Later on, people will say, you know what, you shouldn't have done that, but the story was so important. I'm happy you did do it because it got the ball rolling. So that's Will Miller. Some of the things,
one of the things I want to ask you for our audience's sake, okay? What's the story? Is it that there is UFOs coming here and we know where they're coming from, but we're not wanting to admit it? Is it the fact that the U.S. government has been investigating this, or that we have crash retrievals? What is the story that is being hidden here that we need to know?
Well, the story with the documents is basically a person in the position of Wilson believed that he would be able to talk himself into that program. I asked Miller, I said, should Wilson have expected to get access to that program? He's like, no, he shouldn't have. He's not on the bigot list. The bigot list is people, who on this list has a need to know. So he should have not even expected to get into that. So that's why people are saying it's fake. He wouldn't do that. But then somebody else said, I heard he was just going rogue. He was so incensed that this information was being kept from him, something as monumental as, crash retrieval of a UFO, and really amazing information, the best that we have on UFOs, that he decided to go, make the phone call, and they invited him out there. And he went out, and they told him, allegedly in the notes, they told him, they said, it's the program manager. He met with 3 people, and they said to him, they have a craft, an intact craft they believed could fly through space, space, air, water, dimensions. And it all has question marks. So it's like, it says they believed it could fly. So I don't think, they were able to fly it. And then Wilson asked the program manager, is it from overseas? And the program manager is like, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. And then the program manager says, we don't know where it's from, although we have some ideas. It was technology that was, quote, was not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands. We're trying to understand and exploit the technology. So this was 97 of June. So that's the story. At least, if you believe the notes, there's at least one special access program that has crash retrieval it's a full craft, if you believe the story, an intact craft, which I've always, I'm interested in pieces that are supposedly not of this earth that they've taught. We heard about metamaterials, but this would be an intact craft. This is an overwhelming thing. All of a sudden we get access and we see a flying saucer and it turns out it's the one from Roswell or Corona or all the other, we've heard of other crashes. That's the story. They might have other information, other programs about UFOs, and they also might have biological programs that deal with bodies. That's the other story. We don't know. So bodies and craft, that's world changing, non-human craft, non-human bodies, wherever they're from. That's the story. He was shut out of it. He believes he should have been allowed in. And some people say he purposely did this. He wanted this story out. If you listen to some of the things that Greer said afterwards, he said, you have my permission. If you can get the people on the record that have worked in these programs, you have my permission to go public with this. So if that's an accurate description from Greer about what Wilson said back in 97, then this could be a part of a long-range plan he had and hoped that the meeting with Davis would leak eventually, because he knew, if you believe the documents, he knew that Davis was either taking notes or recording, because he said, what are you going to do with this? And Davis says personal, research, he's not going to talk about it, but they're going to look into this stuff privately, quietly. So, I'm speculating on whether or not Wilson wanted this to get out, but I've heard that from other people that that's the case. Maybe one day we'll know. If this leaks, that's what I'm hoping. The article comes out, people feel comfortable, people in these programs feel comfortable. Congress gives them immunity and say, right now, if there are any people in these programs, you have immunity. We're going to have a hearing. You're allowed to speak about it right now. You all have immunity. That's why this is so important. People don't have no idea. Yeah, with the documents, not that important. Just, but with the New York Times and now the Congress getting involved, and if they're given immunity and they could speak about it, Dave, it's going to be monumental. It's just unbelievable. All of a sudden we have open hearings, hopefully open hearings, and they're talking about, I've been working on a flying saucer for the last 20 years. And then you have witness after witness after witness getting up, talking about working on bodies, bodies not of, not non-human bodies. How are people not realizing how big the story is? And I'm just frustrated. I am a little frustrated at people taking shots. I don't mind it, but I'm just, how are you not just spending every hour of every day thinking about what this story is going to bring when it comes out? It will change the world. It's gonna. And if we get immunity for these people, that's what we've always been asking for. I asked Will Miller back in 2000. I said, if it's an illegal program, how do we get access to it? He's like, well, I'd consult my attorney general. But at this point, now we have the Senate involved. So if that bill gets passed, Dave, just look out. This is going to be the story. It's going to be on 24/7 nonstop. And once people accept it, they're going to want to know why they're here and what their intentions are.
Well, I mean, that's a big thing too. I mean, Nick Pope recently came out and said that he thinks that a few of the senators on the Intelligence Committee were a little freaked out by what they heard in their briefing from the United States Air Force and the United States Navy. Do you believe that that's the reason why all of a sudden there is potential budgeting going into 2021 for UAP research?
I do. And as far as whether or not they were freaked out, I mean, that's speculation on his part, unless he heard something. I didn't see him say he was quoting anybody, but they have to be freaked out. For people who have never thought about it. Marco Rubio is talking about funding UAP research. I'm sure he's been informed about the crash retrieval program. All these people, I heard about that a few months ago, that they knew about this. So they've known for a while. It's like the day is coming, and they know the American public who are not ready for this. They better get ready, Dave. It's such a shock. UFOs and videos. Oh, that's fun. Did you see that UFO? As soon as we get to see, if we get to see a craft and bodies, or people say they've worked on that stuff, I don't know what the reaction will be. And people say, why was it secret? Well, that's one reason why I think it was secret. That, and then why are they here is the other reason. Because if the reason why they're here is really, really negative and scary, all bets are off on that. And I could understand the secrecy. I totally understand keeping the secret. I mean, I would love to have been released back in the 40s when we first, or when we first had it happen, when the first cover-up started, but it didn't happen. And then over the years, I don't think we were ready as a species to hear what they want to tell us. There's one part of my document where Miller is in a YouTube interview. He talks about a high-level retired senior civilian with the NSA, and he told Miller there was a document known only as, quote, the document, and it was on the subject of UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence, and it was so highly classified that only the director of the NSA himself and perhaps one or two other people were actually able to view it. Its existence was widely known, but again, very, very closely held information. So what does that say, Dave? What do you think? 3 people have access to a document that's so sensitive. What did Jimmy Carter sob about allegedly when he was supposedly told information? Do you think it's just that extraterrestrials are visiting? I mean, maybe, but I think the story is a lot darker than that, and it's going to be shattering to a lot of people if the path I'm on, which a lot of people do disagree with. And Tom DeLonge has spoken about this, and I heard it originally when he first started talking about it and kind of rejected it. And then I heard it today, and it all made sense to me. And it's stuff I've heard before, and it's negative. We're kind of, and Charles Fort said we're somebody's property. We're like a herd of cattle. And if that's the case, how are people going to react to that? If we're being used in some way, if their feet, and if they've had a hand in the history of humanity, how are people going to handle that? We're going from UFOs to crash retrievals to bodies to they've been here forever and they've been messing with humanity. And oh, by the way, they might have infiltrated. They might have some of them look like us and they're in our government in different parts. Here's something. Look at the ATIP slides. People will make fun of me for saying what I just said, but look at the ATIP slides. I don't have a website, but ATIP briefed certain people in the government, and Jay on Twitter got this leak on Christopher Mellon's website. Whether or not it was on purpose so people could get it or he was tipped off, I don't know. But one of the slides it talks about the enemy and all of their abilities. And the enemy is the people inside the intelligence behind the UFOs. That's what they're talking about. And slide 9, one of them says they have the ability to influence decision makers. Think about that. This is an ATIP slide. They have the ability to influence decision makers. They can affect world leaders, Dave. Think about that. That's an ATIP slide. I'm not making that up. So if that's true, how do we defend against that? How do we defend against an enemy that can make our leaders do certain things,
Well, I mean, let's face it. There are many people, and people on Earth are easy to take bribes to. So, I mean, the aliens throw a few bucks their way, and a fancy ride on a brand new car. Maybe one of them old Chrysler K cars with the windows blacked out. It could happen. We got about 2 minutes to go here before we go to break at the bottom of the hour. Joe Murgia is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. But then again, for many people in the public who are like, show me proof, where is the proof? It's hard for people, Joe, to take people like yourself, myself, other researchers out there, or even officials at their word that this is even an issue or a problem.
Totally understand. I don't people on this stuff. On this stuff, I'm speculating. Obviously, I'm putting together all the information I've collected and stored in my head and had forgotten, and now it's coming back up again. I'm talking about exorcisms now, David, and there's a connection to this phenomenon. In my opinion, it's been coming up in my conversations, which I would never have I would never talk about that. There's a lot of stuff I'm talking about I would never talk about. But then we have the BASS project manager. George Knapp had an article where it's talking about saying whatever the intelligence is, they can make me see a UFO, and the person standing next to me, they can make it so they cannot see a UFO. People, I'm not sure if that's in my article, but that was on George Knapp. That was a BASS study. They were involved in the UFO program. They were the contractor. That was Robert Bigelow's company. So if they have that ability, and granted, at this point, I talk about that, but I don't say that's the way it is. That's the truth. No, I stick with the New York Times and the documents. Later on, I don't know what kind of evidence our government has on all of that stuff. You have to read books like The Gods of Eden is a great book for people to start at.
Absolutely.
So no, I do not have the proof. I don't have the proof. Right now people should be skeptical of what I'm saying, but do their own reading, and then hopefully down the line, maybe if our government has evidence to show us, hey, we could show you specifics of what went on over the years. We do have evidence. I would think there's some smart people in our government that figured it out if what I'm talking about is a reality.
Joe, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we're going to end with Chris Martini in our YouTube chat asking, what's worse, flesh-eating arachnids or controllers of our fate? We'll find out, and about a potential New York Times article with Joe Murgia. UFOjoe.net is his website on Spaced Out Radio. Dude, we're kicking ass and taking names on this one tonight. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. It's having fun. And am I yelling too much?
No. Keep it going, dude. You're doing fantastic. Doing fantastic.
It's like a lot of these in my head. It's like somebody said to me on Twitter, like, "Where is somebody feeding you this information because it's really interesting?" I'm like, "No, it just popped into my head." I mean, Grant talks about, I forget what the word he calls it, where they feed you information, somebody, quote unquote. But I forget, what the word, if he's in the chat room, what's the word? A download. But I never felt like I never felt like I got a download. It's right. I'm referring to stuff that I read back in the 90s, and then now people are referring to new books. I bought a book today on that DeLong recommended about demonology. So it's like, or daemons. I don't know the word. It's spelled a little different than demons. So
is that the DAEMONS?
Yeah, and I would never buy a book about that. But now, like I said, I spoke to somebody who had experience with exorcisms, and I'm like, I think there's a connection. I do. I think, as Jacques Vallée said, he thinks it's all one. And I know we've talked about this. You don't agree, but he thinks it's all one source. And I don't know. Maybe it's multiple.
I think there's an invisible thread that ties everything together. I totally believe that there is this invisible thread that is combined with everything. But are aliens demons from, biblical proportions? I don't think so. I mean, I gave you my encounter the other day that I had, my face-to-face encounter back in 2014, and that was trippy enough as it is, man. So I don't know, because I understand these gentlemen who are talking about this are so smart, way smarter than I can ever be, but my experience says different. You know what I'm saying? And this is where I get caught in the middle in this UFO tug of war.
Here's the problem. The problem is, and it's nothing against you, but I have to, no matter what experience you or anybody else has, they can manipulate it into anything they want. I mean, that doesn't mean your experience wasn't exactly what you think it was. Maybe it was, but if they can make one person see a UFO and somebody else, how do you know they didn't make you see what you saw? You're a talk radio guy. You're going to get that information out eventually. If they can travel through time, like John Alexander said, it was precognitive sentient phenomenon. So it's like, maybe that was the plan. They will spread this more ET out there. They won't be looking at the real source. So I don't know. I know people say that's outlandish, but I don't know. I mean, you hear about all the people in the free study, the abductees, and how the majority of them had a positive experience. How do you know that it wasn't, these things can't mimic a positive experience? I don't know that.
And for those for those who are experiencers out there, though, Joe, who have had that positive experience, like some of mine had, and I've had good experience and I've had bad experiences. Okay. I mean, but I can say this from an experiencer's point of view and trying to combine that with a journalist's point of view. I am trying to figure out the balance between the two, because I mean, that's like saying every person on this planet is a good egg. Okay, we know there's bad people. There are the Ted Bundys and the Jeffrey Dahmers and the Hitlers and the Mussolinis out there in this world, and there has been since the beginning of time. But the majority of the people are good, and I think that's where it kind of draws a little bit of a line, because I don't believe the threat narrative at all. Okay, but that's just me. Others are like that as well, but I think it's a safe narrative to have, to push an agenda and to push a media outlook and a media narrative, as well as to push for funding, because one thing we do know when it comes to governments and military spending, fear sells. Fear opens up the taxpayers' wallets.
Are we back on yet? Or are we still on YouTube?
No, we still got a minute left. We're still on YouTube.
Yeah, I would like to save that discussion because I couldn't disagree with you more. And a week ago, I would have agreed with you. That's how much I flipped. It's like I agreed with you a week ago, and it's like then certain things flipped. I'm like, I don't think this is about funding. It's too big of a story about funding. But back to the good. Yeah, I think there's some good here. But if the overall story is more esoteric, though, it's like I don't know if I want to get into that. You know, what created this world, and that energy is the overpowering energy. That doesn't mean there's not good here. Angels, people talk about angels, whatever they are. Yeah, I think that stuff that's very possible. But the overwhelming control of this planet, that's what I'm talking about. Doesn't mean there's not.
Well,
other stuff.
if we put it this way, if we got to skip the news tonight, if you're up for it, if we got to skip the news tonight and just go the full 3 hours, I'm willing to drop the gloves with you on that one. All right.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm not going to argue.
No. There's no argument.
It's my opinion, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's my opinion on this stuff. I can't really forcefully say, I am right about this. This is the way it is. I'll never say that with that stuff unless somebody shows me some evidence of that. Right now, it's opinion. All
right, buddy. We're going to go back here. Thank you, Teresa, Dark Hour, and BGs for the super chats. We're going to continue on here. We're at 164. Let's see if we can hit 170 tonight. 170 is the goal. That'd be a new record. Music is on.
Auctioneer.
We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate your time. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio for the show, and our brand new handle on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show as well. Tonight, we are talking the Wilson files, UFOs, the real story behind the story. Where does this story go? What does it mean for you and me? Because there's a lot of people like our guest tonight, Joe Murgia, who believe and have researched the foundations of what could be one of the biggest stories in humankind's history, and that is we are being visited. Joe's website, ufojoe.net. I highly suggest you check it on out. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. Having a great time.
Wonderful. Me too, man. Me too. And we say thank you to everybody in our chat rooms tonight who are participating tonight as well. Joe, in regards to this, the New York Times back on December 16th, 2017, opened up a can of worms when they showed the 3 videos of the UFOs, and then they broke the article that the ATIP program was there. And now, fast forward to any day now, we could be expecting another article coming out from Ralph Blumenthal, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and Leslie Kean, potentially Helene Cooper as well, on this subject regarding the Wilson files and crash retrievals. How big of a story is this, and how do you know it's coming?
So I think it was like a month and a half ago, Giuliano Marankovic is like, hey, Michael Hall is going to have an interview with Ralph Blumenthal about the Wilson Davis documents, and it's going to be live on Facebook. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Come on. There's no way. And I was like, there's no way. You're misunderstanding something. He goes, no. Check it out. So I go on Facebook and I look and I'm waiting, and there's Hall saying, yep, Ralph's about to call in 5 minutes. We're going to talk the Wilson Davis documents. And I'm like, this is not real. There's no way. So Ralph Blumenthal calls in and I'm listening. So I'm on Twitter. I'm live tweeting every detail I can get down. And basically it's a fact finding mission. He wants to know, what's going on with the documents, who can I talk to? And I'm like, something about this does not seem right. This doesn't seem like this should be going out. And then at the very end, Blumenthal goes, well, just take my cell number down and call me if anything comes out. And he gives out the cell number. I'm like, okay. There's obviously a miscommunication here. He does not know. But I wrote down his cell number. And I had communicated with him a little tiny bit about his upcoming John Mack book on Twitter DM. And so I texted him and said, hey, I have a quote from Eric Davis in my upcoming blog if you're interested, because not a lot of people have not got quotes from him. And that was like the New York Times. I figured I'd try to help. Doesn't respond. Next thing you know, I heard the tape later. I didn't hear it live. He calls back Michael Hall. He's like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm getting phone calls. I'm getting phone calls." So other people heard his number, took it down, started calling him. So I'm imagining Blumenthal's walking down the street in Manhattan after the phone call with Hall, and he's getting phone calls saying, "Yeah, can I speak to Ralph?" He's like, "This is Ralph. Yeah, I saw a UFO over the beach last night. It was glowing red, and I want to know if you could tell me what I saw." And he's getting phone call after phone call, and he calls, so he calls Hall back. He's like, "You got to take it down. You got to take it down. I told you we needed to be discreet about this." And Hall's like, "I'll take it down. I'll take it down." But we have it. We had everything thanks to the magical man in Ireland who recorded everything. And so we had everything. And so people started coming at us when we started talking about there's a big outlet. And then we mentioned, I heard it from other people, and the New York Times is involved, and they're like, "This is nonsense. There's no way. Leslie's denying that there's any story, and there's no way." And like, once again, people just had to reach out to us, and privately we would have told them. The reason we backed off, and I deleted all my tweets, I said, "You know what? Let's give them time. It's the New York Times. This is the biggest story. It's huge." We thought it was only Wilson Davis at the time, but so I deleted all my tweets, and let's give them time. And like I said, people were attacking us saying, "You're making this up. There's no story. What are you talking about?" Some major reporters from other outlets who broke the 2017 story, they were like, "This is nonsense. Nobody's interested in this. Why would an admiral talk like this? This does not sound like an admiral." And like, well, first of all, it's somebody taking your notes. It's not an admiral. You don't know the story, which was really surprising. It's a pretty high profile person. So that's what happened. And along the way, I was writing an article. I started in late April, I think it was, and just writing and taking time off. And then I started hearing from more people, and people put me into contact with other people, said, "Yep, New York Times is working on it. This, and it's supposed to be really good, and there may be a politician involved in it." And so it's like, all right. And once again, people were doubting it, and I'm like, they didn't reach out privately. And I've told some people, who helped me out, did some really nice stuff. I'm like, "Hey, call me up. Let's talk about it so I could tell you what I know." And I told them some of what I knew. And then I think it all changed last year when Luis Elizondo went on Tucker Carlson and said, when Carlson out of the blue says, "Do you believe we have a debris from a UFO in our possession, the United States government?" And Elizondo goes, "Simply put, yes." So he answered it twice, and I was like, where did that come from? All of a sudden, we're talking crash retrieval? So I think that's when the Times started working on crash retrieval. And then they found out about Wilson Davis a month and a half to 2 months ago, and they added that to the story. So that's where we are now.
All right.
And I think Grant has reported that other newspapers finally figured it out, and they're playing catch up, desperately trying to beat the Times, which I don't think quality-wise they'll be able to do at this point. But timing-wise, the New York Times must feel the pressure, because I would think they want to be first. So it can happen any moment, Dave. With that pressure, it's such a big story. As long as they feel comfortable with it, I'm sure they're working nonstop right now, the editors. So I'm really curious to see what happens. I know, other outlets, if they beat the Times, I don't think they could beat the coverage, because the Times has had such a long time to cover this, but they could put something out. Who knows? I don't know. It's curious. Very exciting to see what happens.
Why do you think the New York Times has held off on so many articles? All right, because I know that when the 2017 article came out, it was one of the highest selling newspapers that the New York Times has ever had, next to 9/11 papers when 9/11 happened. That says something about the intrigue of people about this subject, number one. But what amazed me about that from a journalistic point of view was that there was no follow-up. And what I'm saying is, people will sit there and say, well, it took a few months, but no. In journalism terms, a follow-up is like literally the next couple of days, the next week, maybe 2 weeks. That's a follow-up. And it never happened. Now, I had heard a rumor that there was an article there, but the editors kiboshed it. Now, here we are again in this same situation where there's seemingly all this buildup to it. We have no idea what the editors are going to say. We have no idea whether or not they need to talk to lawyers about this and get everything pushed forward in the article to make sure that they're not going to be sued by government agencies or the military. I mean, there's a long process in regards to this, is there not?
I'm sure they're doing their best to cover all of that, and whether or not, the story has to be credible, people on the record. I know Leslie Kean has said they will, people are saying, when's the next story? When's the next story? And she's like, we'll get to the next story when we have something to report. We don't have anything right now. And, people asked her, it was last year, I don't know if it was October, November, she said, we're working on something we can't talk about. Pretty sure that's what this article was. So other outlets may be able to beat them to the punch, but what can they put together in a week or so? I don't think anything of real substance with all the main players involved. And I mean, the New York Times, these reporters, Helene Cooper, and I would hope Helene Cooper and some other mainstream New York Times writer, somebody who's not connected to UFOs, that would be the best for me, because Helene Cooper, if you read how she reacted to the first article, she said Elizondo sounded credible. This is amazing. But then when she got on the subway, she's like, she had her doubts creeping in. So I can't imagine what she's thinking now if she's part of this story and she's convinced that she's convinced that we have, a full flying saucer or giant pieces, something from damage, and we have bodies. That's the person you want to talk to, because she's mainstream with no interest in the subject. She's a Pentagon correspondent. And she was a key to 2017. She's a key to this story too. And I'm sure they're working, figuring out everything. There's so many angles to this. I don't think they're going to get sued, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're getting threats by certain programs saying you can't. There's others. Look at the Pentagon Papers. There's a whole movie about that. It's a really, really delicate dance, and there's got to be a movie's got to be made just about how this article was made with the reporters involved. It's going to be, it's like it is historic. It's going to be, I can't even put it into words how big this is going to be. And people, I'm not overhyping this.
Okay, so the mainstream media, in my opinion, has done a terrible job at covering this story. All right, and that's because, as I've said to our listeners before, they've never wanted this story. And I think you've worked in enough media to agree with that. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, and if I am, I do not mean to. But the way they have covered this, if there is a crash retrieval that is going to be reported on, if there is that UFO, if there is bodies that go along with that, that opens up the doors to so many questions that the media has not asked or refused to ask in regards to this history when they've had the opportunity. I mean, not a single reporter, when the Pentagon announced last year that they were in fact looking into UFOs and had been for a while, not a single reporter, Joe, actually asked the question, what happened at Roswell? What happened in Phoenix? What happened at Kecksburg? Right. Okay, perfect opportunity to do that if they've been doing this historically. Right? And it hasn't been asked. Well, so is the media even prepared? Take away Helene Cooper, take away Leslie Kean and Tucker Carlson and his bad choice of ties, or whatever it may be. Okay, take them all away. The media has done a terrible job at covering this topic.
You know why, Dave? Because they are infiltrated by aliens. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Of course. I'm joking.
Now I'm going to have to put my tinfoil on.
Brian Bender has done a great job. Although on this, I haven't heard from him very much, but I think that'll change. And the media is not prepared, and they're definitely not prepared to talk about potential intentions of what this is. That's where I think the UFO community is going to be such in demand for that, because we've been at it and we know a lot of the material. Richard Dolan, my God, the amount of information in his head is just amazing. Same with Grant Cameron. I'm not able to memorize a lot of that stuff. It's some of it I am as I go along. I could pick it up, but yeah, the media has been horrible. They're horrible. And they're going to have to look at themselves afterwards. How did you miss such a big story? And I don't know how they're going to react to that. Are they going to try to ignore it? And I don't think they can ignore this one.
If that comes out that way, I agree with you, but by the way, I'm just quick change of topics here. We should send out a happy birthday to Richard Dolan from all of us listening. And it was his birthday. And if you're listening, happy birthday to you and all the best to you on this day. But, the fact is, Joe, when you started in the media and I started in the media, there were still investigative journalists. There was still investigative reporting being put on by a lot of outlets, newspaper, television, radio. And that has kind of switched over the last 15, 20 years with the more selective infotainment, if you want to call it that. And they're not delving into a lot of stories. Let's turn the tides here for a second. Are the resources there and available in today's modern media to even cover this story properly, since for decades the ball has been dropped?
I think I did a pretty good job on my blog. I'm one person. I have no funding, but it's not going to get the ball moving. It's an interesting piece to read, and it's a good starting point. But I think there's enough resources there, and I think they'll put the resources in to cover it. Washington Post, New York Times, and I was talking to somebody. I'm like, what if the New York Times passes, the editors find they can't do it? Where else can they go that's credible? And I'm like, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, which is really not there. It's not something I could see there, but there's not a lot of options there. Not a lot of big places that have resources for investigative journalism. So it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna have to, Dave. There's no choice. It's gonna be an avalanche. People, I'm hoping it may not happen right away, but let's see. Like I said, if we get the immunity for the people in these programs, it's gonna be. I don't think we'll need the media, but we're gonna get this. I would hope we'll get to see that stuff. They could also have closed hearings, which would be horrible. I mean, I don't know how we could put up with that. If these people are going to come forward and talk about stuff they worked on of non-human technology and non-human biology, American people cannot, and the world cannot put up with that being secret at this point. The cat's out of the bag. So yeah, I'm not too worried about resources at this point. Let's see what the story is. We need to see what's in the story.
Well, and that's the hard part, is what is the story? And if it does come out, and I like Danny Silva's point from the silverrecord.com in our chat room here. He goes, what if this is about setting up a public UAP task force? Or maybe did we already see the precursor to this with the announcement of the Space Force? Could this all be tied together?
No, this is not about the UAP. That's not. It's about crash retrieval of UFOs. That's what the program is about. That's what it's about. I have pretty good sources on that. You don't work for months. They've worked for months on this. You don't look into Wilson Davis. If you're doing a story on what are the task force? No way. This is so much bigger. I mean, people have contacted Leslie, and she's like, no story there. She can't say. First of all, they don't want anybody else to find out because the competitors. That's not I have no problem. That's not my concern. They're competitors. I do want the New York Times to do the story, but if somebody else does it, great. I do want the best story to come out. But also, it's fragile. And I understand it. And I'm sure I've spoken about it too early. At one point when I first learned about it, and I let it leak. I wasn't told not to talk about it, and I don't have any. Nobody should tell me. Nobody has told me not to talk about it. Although I will share one thing. I have not shared this. I will not say who told me. But when I was a day or two from publishing my blog, and this is nothing nefarious, this person. I can't explain it right now. I'll explain it one day. But somebody said, can you hold off publishing your article until the New York Times goes? And it took me 5 seconds to say, no way. There's no way. I just put so much time into this article. I just stayed up for the last 4 days with 2 hours sleep each night. There's no way am I waiting. I mean, their story is not affected by me, no matter what I put out. I mean, I'm sure Will Miller is going to be in their story, and I have Will Miller too. And I'm sure they're going to have hopefully Dr. Davis and some of the quotes. But what they're going to do is going to blow mine away. And I'm thinking, if I thought that my article could affect them in any way, I would think about it. But there's no way. Their publishing has nothing to do with my article coming out. So I told this person, I'm like, I appreciate what you're saying, but no. And they said, Totally understood. Just wanted it on the record. I'm like, okay, no problem. Then we just got back to a normal conversation. So that's another reason I knew they were working on a story, because this person knows, I can't say who they are, but yeah, they would be in the know to know if the New York Times was working on a story. So, and it's crash retrieval. There's no doubt. One of the documents I have in my blog is about a 1961 SNIE National Intelligence Estimate, and it talks about UFOs crashing in Russia, and Russia mistaking these nuclear-powered UFOs for a missile from us and reacting as if we attacked them, and they're going to react with missiles, nuclear missiles in the United States, kill tens of millions of Americans, and then we respond and kill hundreds of millions of Americans. So that's what this article is. That's what that document is about, and I'm sure it's legitimate, but I've gotten a lot of flack from people. It mentions MJ12, this part of the document. They mention this acronym, and that wasn't used in this year. So I talked to a source, and they're like, no, that's not how these programs, that's not how these black projects work with these documents. This is why. And they didn't go into every detail, but I have details that were shared with me, which I cannot share. And that document is real. It's a big part to see MJ12, which is so controversial in this field, so controversial that I've avoided it. I'm like, I usually avoid stuff like that where it's just back and forth. Like Roswell, I never delved too deep into it. I mean, I know the basic story and I looked into it, but it's so controversial. And there's so much, as James Fox said, documentary filmmaker, he's like, it's just such it's a messy case, you know? And he finally got into in his documentary that's coming out, The Phenomenon. So I cannot wait to see. And he said Jacques Vallée told him, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So that's going to be a great thing. I forgot where I was going with this, but yeah, the document is a big part of this. Hopefully they have more documents. Hopefully they actually have the original, which that would shut up a lot of people. That's basically MJ12 is real. And that's what Will Miller said. He was told, the aide, Admiral Wilson's aide told him MJ12 is real. So that's a big deal because it's such a contentious issue in ufology. I get ridiculed for that. And, you know, it's like, I don't really know documents. I put the document out. I shared what my source said, and people can debate it. And people have torn it apart. I mean, they've torn that article apart. And I go back to the source and I go, you know, there's some typos in there. What's going on with the typos? And they said, we know about the typos. The person who wrote the situation, you know, the report, they're known for typos. They have a history of typos. We know who they are. So I was like, that was my favorite thing. I'm like, you know what? That is such a great answer. And whether or not that's true, we're going to find out, because I think that's going to be part of the Times article. And I was not told that, but I think it's a really fair guess that it's going to be in there. And it's going to make people evaluate their analysis skills, because some of the people, like I said, they've come at me really hard over that. And I kind of ignore it because I can't debate them. They know more than me on this. My source can, you know, and even Dr. Eric Davis has spoken out about it. He doesn't want to take time to debate it too. But I think we're going to hear a lot more about that document, and hopefully more documents that they can get, hopefully.
We've got about 2 minutes here before we got to go to break. At the top of the hour, Joe Murgia is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. If it is about crash retrieval, which one are we talking about here? What, you know, give your guesstimation on this.
No idea. I have no idea, Dave. I don't know. I don't even know every crash retrieval that's out there. I don't know every story that's out there. If it's an intact craft, whether or not, I don't know if Wilson was lied to by this program manager. I don't know. Was it disinformation? That's always possible. I don't care where it's from. I would like it to be from Roswell. I bought some Day After Roswell books just in case, you know, some collector's items. And as much as that book has problems, from everything I heard, the original manuscript, which was Philip Corso's notes, that's that little small chapter that dealt with Roswell. That's gold. And I know people have those notes. It's like a little bound book that he made, and that's what you need to look at. Not the book. You know, there's parts of that in the book, but there's also stuff in the book that's just nonsense. You know, and I've talked to people who have told me what parts, and everybody knows the parts. You know, the integrated circuit, how that came from the crash retrieval, and they back engineered it based on the technology, and that's how we got the integrated circuit, which people have said no, the integrated circuit was being worked on before Roswell crashed. So, but there's other technology in there that may have come from that, and you know, so I'm hoping it's Roswell. Somebody said they'll run the article on July 8th, which I think is the day Roswell was the announcement was made about Roswell. But I don't think timing is an issue here. I think getting it right and beating your competitor has to be an issue right now. I haven't worked in a newspaper, but it's got to be key.
Oh, definitely. Joe, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break at the top of the hour. Joe Murgia is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're talking UFOs, the Wilson documents. Where's this going? And should we storm Area 51 just in case they actually do have some of them aliens there? If the New York Times article comes out and says so. We'll be back with Hour 3 coming up next on Spaced Out Radio.
Then we can really get into controversy just a little bit. If you want to talk about Lazar, we can. Really a little bit.
Well, we'll open it up after this, dude. We'll open it up after this. So,
do you take phone calls?
No, I don't take phone calls. No.
I love that. I do like phone calls, but when I'm listening to a show, I don't like phone calls. I like taking them. I don't like listening to them though.
Hey, bud, I'm just going to run my dogs out quickly again here. I'll be right back, okay?
How much time we have?
We got about 5.5 minutes.
Feel silky smooth.
Thanks.
Use promo code SOR2019 at mightymoosebeard.com today.
The party is always on at the Moose Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is where you want to be when visiting Canada's West Coast. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose cranks up the rock while serving some of the best rated food in the city. The menu starts at $6.95. Why party anywhere else in Vancouver when the Moose is right there? Get your horns up and rock with the Moose, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
We are scouring the world for the most intriguing stories of your day. Take the time to read up on the SOR Newswire, where our team, led by Captain Shirk, will deliver to you some of the best paranormal and supernatural news, along with some stories that will blow your mind from the weird to the wacky. It's the news outside the news that piques interest, and that's what we're looking to deliver to you. The SOR Newswire, only at spacedoutradio.com.
For the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. The Space Travelers Club is a place where you can interact with other listeners, either live during the show or on our great forum. We want your stories, pictures, comments, and ideas. You'll get live video streams, exclusive content, and be a part of our newsletter. Stay in touch with everything SOR. The Space Travelers Club is just $5 a month at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, space travelers, this is John Resig, founder of the Chive and Chive Charities. If you know anything about our website, you know we like to do things a little differently. We're not some faceless organization collecting money for a nebulous cause. Our donor dollars go directly toward life-improving items. Then we give those items directly to an underdog who needs it most. To become a donor with Spaced Out Radio's official charity, Chive Charities, just go to chivecharities.org/donate.
Hi there, this is the paranormal lawyer Michael W. Hall. I'd like to invite you to listen in each Sunday night where we're going to open up your eyes to everything strange and paranormal. I will be hosting some great guests with topics that affect us all, such as UFOs, ghosts, and everything paranormal. Let's learn together on Spaced Out Radio Sunday with myself, Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for creative ways to get your company out in the public? How about advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Our sales department is waiting to hear from you, and we can work around any budget. From commercial spots to banners to special promotions, there are many opportunities to get your name and product out to our SOR listeners. For a price guide and more information, please contact us at sales@spacedoutradio.com.
Hello, space travelers. It's me again, Carl. Don't forget to join the Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month and follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Our Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our Facebook page is Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Come woo it up with Spaced Out Radio today. Bye.
Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Stacy from the Experiencer Support Association.
All right, I'm back, dude. We got 2 minutes.
Okay. Just reading. I retweeted this. This is to me. The hype meter is already at 11 stupid and climbing. I've seen too much of this building up stuff only for nothing worthwhile to appear, or quote unquote amazing footage that turns out to be nothing of the kind. I hope I'm wrong and you're not setting yourself up for a fail here.
Where's that?
You're wrong.
Is that on Twitter?
That's Twitter. That's Twitter. I always get that stuff, you know.
Oh, nice.
That's not that bad. That's not that bad, but I like reading mean tweets. That's not a mean one. When the whole football thing happened, I had threats from people, football fans, you know, that was their guy. So you can't, how dare you say he might be a rapist? Yeah, I got threats. It was unbelievable. And they insulted my dog. I'm like, can you believe that? You insult my dog? Nobody insults my dog.
Damn it, man. You know, keep the dogs out of this. They're innocent, you know?
You could say what you want about me. Do not talk about my dog.
Exactly. I hear what you're saying there, man. I hear what you're saying there. Do you want to go to the distance, or do you want to
Okay. Yeah, definitely. This is great practice for me because I need as much practice on radio. It's nice having you here. You know, when I go specific about notes and everything that happened along the way, I don't remember everything. The article's 24,000 words, but everything we've talked about, thanks. We could talk about I don't know what we haven't. There's little things we haven't covered, but yeah, we can talk about.
Just go wherever.
We got to talk about Maguire's letter. It's a huge thing. It's like I tweeted it out early and it didn't get any love on Twitter. I'm like, it's huge. It's almost confirmation. If Maguire's telling the truth, it's huge.
Absolutely.
You know, it ends the debate as far as if you believe Bob Maguire and he didn't just make it up. And you know him, right?
I know Bob very well, and we're talking Science Bob here. I'm sure he's lurking in the background somewhere and just hasn't popped in, but I know Science Bob is always tuned into this show.
Well, he did us a big favor when he posted what he did today. I made sure I screenshot it. I'm like, make sure he doesn't delete this because this is important. Just, I mean, in the big scheme, a week from now, whatever it is, it's not important because we're going to know, but it's still what he says in that, and I'll read it later.
All right, buddy, here we go.
Okay.
Would you like to connect?
Music is on. Super chat is open. Thank you to everybody who has donated tonight. Really appreciate that.
Now,
here we go.
Back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune us on in. We welcome back everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates across North America and on the digital side on TalkStream Live and Revolution Radio. Remember, you can check out all of our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Krobylos. Krobylos is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show and on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Tonight we are talking with Joe Murgia. He is a blogger, UFO enthusiast. This guy has got some great information on the Wilson files. And if you've missed most of this show so far, this is definitely one you are going to want to hit the replay button on, because he's given out a lot of great information, a lot of sources about what's coming down. Crash retrievals? Really? Do we have spaceships? Joe's website, ufojoe.net. If you want to read up on his blogs, I highly suggest you do. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. And I could summarize, if people are just joining, basically 1997, Admiral Wilson, Tom Wilson, he was a Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon. They briefed the president. He was told that there is a UFO program that is hidden. He went and looked for it, was told he did not have a need to know, and they told him it was a program that dealt with crash retrieval of UFOs, and they had an intact craft, and they so that was 97, and then in 2002, these notes leaked that said Dr. Eric Davis met with him in Las Vegas, and Wilson basically told him the story of what happened when he got there. You know, they have an intact craft, and then he was turned away because he did not have a need to know, and he was upset about that. And that's basically that's the basic story right there. And now supposedly the New York Times is working on a story about crash retrievals and those documents.
Joe, there are a lot of very smart people behind the scenes in front of the scenes who have been investigating this topic. All right. We talk about Eric Davis. We talk about Bob Maguire. We talk about Chris Cogswell. We talk about other people who have been absolutely brilliant and have put their education forward into trying to figure out what is really going on in this field. Do you think that we look at these people almost on a downward spiral because they have come out publicly talking about UFOs? Or should we put them a little bit more on the pedestal because the field of ufology has always said and stated, why are we not taking this more seriously? Why aren't scientists looking at it? Yet there's a heck of a lot more scientists out there looking into this than what most people in this field really realize, isn't there?
Yeah, personally, I don't know how many scientists are involved. I don't have any information on that. I would hope, I mean, you have the Invisible College, which Jacques Vallée, I think he termed that phrase, coined that phrase. And there are people, there are definitely more people than we know about. How many? I don't know. For me, Eric Davis needs to be, if I was coming up with a Mount Rushmore of ufology, it would be Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, Luis Elizondo, J. Allen Hynek. There's not enough room. There's more people. And Davis and Puthoff get, it's always the same crowd. I'm like, yeah, it's the same crowd because nobody else is willing to look at it. It's a very limited pool of people, scientists that are open to it. The fact that Eric Davis spent 6 years at Skinwalker Ranch, Colin Kelleher, I mean, it's not a lot of people that would, number one, want to do that. And then number two, have a book written about them. And that's one thing Davis told me. He said, nobody knows this, but I don't think I'm betraying anything here, but he said, yeah, he's listed as the astrophysicist in Hunt for the Skinwalker. He said, I never asked to be anonymous. He goes, I don't know why they did that. So he has not hidden whatsoever from any of this. And Puthoff is in his 80s now. People are like, well, he's worked for the CIA. Yeah, he worked on the remote viewing program. Come on. That was amazing that he helped come up with that with Ingo Swann, a natural psychic. So all these people have been at it a long time, and they deserve – there's got to be some award day for all this stuff, all these people that have put the time in and have gotten, accused of being these government plants and running a CIA operation. And I'm sure the CIA is involved, but not, with all these guys like Davis and Puthoff. No, and there's such a long list, Vallée, all these people. But like I said, it's a small pool of people, NIDS. How many people want to work on paranormal, investigating cattle mutilations or, alleged, skinwalkers at a ranch or shape-shifting and UFOs? Not a lot of people. And the mainstream guys don't want to lose their funding, so they don't touch it. They don't want to get ridiculed. It's still a hot topic. It's a hot button topic. So it's the same thing. It's changed a little bit. Maybe this will open up the floodgates because we need thinkers, we need philosophers, we need scientists, we need psychologists. We're going to need all of that stuff, especially if it's a really troubling outcome as far as intention. We're going to need professionals to help people deal with this. It's beyond my pay grade. I could tell you what I think is going on, but it's such a big thing to get people's heads to wrap it around what I think is going on, that hopefully a lot of it, we need it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We need people to get involved, professionals. So that's the next step. But like I said, and I keep repeating myself, let's see what's in the article first.
All right. I'll debate you on this a bit, okay? Because I think for a lot of people out there, okay, they look at somebody like Hal Puthoff, or they look at somebody who has worked for the CIA, or Rick Doty, or someone along those lines, and they look at these people and they sit there and they think, all right, how do we know we're going to get the truth out of them? How do we know that we are going to get the best of their honest answers when for years they've been doing this cover-up of this phenomena and displacing and ridiculing people about this entire subject? I mean, they're very hard to trust, and I can understand where people get frustrated in regards to not wanting to trust people like Puthoff or Semivan or people along in that ilk of science that has been investigating this, because we don't know whether their commitment is to the public or their commitment is to their government and the NDAs that they've signed.
I couldn't disagree with you more on put off. I mean, listen to his lecture. People just judge when he's talking. I'm sure there's some stuff he can't talk about. He can't break certain, you can't just talk about stuff he signed an NDA over, but listen to him and make your judgment. He's been at it such a long time. I don't think he's going to lie to us. I think he might avoid a question. If you listen, there are some questions he won't answer. I mean, the fact that he talked about that document that was online, he said, yeah, there's a document online that we don't know how it leaked. And that's how that's how Danny and I found out about it. And he found out before me, the origin. And then I asked the source and they pointed me in the right direction. And then you mentioned Doty. I know Put Off, Doty worked for Put Off, but I wouldn't put them in the same league. And Put Off, I mean, Doty did disinformation. You could argue the merits of that. Was he doing his job? What was he being told? So yeah, I understand people not wanting to trust, what they have to say, but Put Off doesn't say anything to me. It doesn't say controversial. There's certain subjects he avoids. Like he won't talk about the paper he wrote about on ultra-terrestrials. And it's not going to be a classified paper. He doesn't think it's ready to be released to the public. And I would love to see that. And I've tried, but I failed. What other names did you mention for people
Jim
that are involved in
Semivan.
this? Semivan is perfect. Perfect, because there's a percentage of the population that has had experience with this phenomenon. And some of those people work in the government. 1998, General Patrick Hughes, he's the head of the DIA. I think he was in Wilson's briefing. I'm not positive, but he had an experience. His family had an experience. So he asked for an expedited briefing with Miller and Greer. That happened in 98. Jim Semivan, he wrote the forward to Tom DeLonge's Secret Machines, talks about his experience in college with his wife. Frightening experience, amazing experience, whatever. It's the phenomenon. These guys have had an experience. So the fact that Semivan is interested, that tells you why he's interested, unless you want to say it's all a fake story. They're just trying to cover up. I don't believe that. Are there people in the government that don't want this story out, but I don't really think it's nefarious. I think it's more of they don't think the truth can be handled. We can't handle the truth. I hate to use that line. I mean, there may be some people out there. There may be some people in the government that it's all military in their mind. They just want to take advantage of the technology, and that's how they think. Yes, I'm sure there are people in the government, and a lot of these guys think like that. And I always have that in the back of my mind when I debated a certain theory with one of the guys who works for the government or has worked for the government. But overall, I think they want to know what's going on. I think some of them have more of an idea than they'll say publicly. I try to squeeze stuff out of these guys, but it's hard when you start getting into intentions, since there's no hard proof of that. But go ahead. That's really my take on it.
Well, I mean, the question is, what is the intention and why do it? Okay, why Robert Bigelow, a privateer? Why did he buy into MUFON to get the statistics? I mean, there's a lot of simple questions out there that need to be answered and addressed.
But his grandparents had a sighting in Mount Charleston in Vegas. It started way back then. That's when his interest started. When his 60 Minutes interview, they had an up-close sighting where it was right in their face. And then, he lost a loved one. And so he started looking into consciousness and life after death, and then got obsessed with it, just like us. If you look at some of these interviews that are on Vimeo that I had never seen before, and it's like listening to him, I'm like, it's just like me, except he's super smart and super rich. And then the MUFON stuff, I don't understand the motive behind MUFON. I don't understand. I will not try to explain that. I don't understand the whole story, and he's not spoken about it. He's very tight-lipped about a lot of stuff, and I wish he was more like Brandon Fugel, the current owner of Skinwalker, who's so open. It's amazing, night and day. I would like to know. I'm hoping one day soon, Mr. Bigelow comes out and tells us, takes like an all-access interview and tells us everything he knows, because he's getting older too. So I'm speculating. I would speculate to know what happened with MUFON and why they got that information on experiences. I think he's just trying to get to the story, and he's just not as open with sharing as Brandon Fugel is. So yeah, Bigelow is
all right.
I know he gets a lot of grief, but I like what he's done a lot. We would not have known about Skinwalker if he didn't let Knapp and Kelleher write that book.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the public has a right to know? Because if this is of national security, All right, protecting the nation, protecting the world from what may be coming. Maybe they have a signal. Maybe they have had reports. Maybe there is contact that has already been made and they're unsure of it. Does the public have a right to know this?
I think the public has a right to know all of it. The problem is you got to balance what you think the reaction is going to be. I mean, that's always been an issue over the years, war of the world scenario. But, if they were attacking like that, people need to know, and people would eventually know, but that's not what's happening. It's more going on in the background. And that's a really big question I can't answer. What do you think? We have to sit people down, and I don't even know how you break that news. If my working theory is right, if it's a nefarious, overpowering intelligence that's here and manipulating humanity, how do you break that news? I mean, it's hard enough to tell people in my family that UFOs are real. They have no interest in it. I don't know how they're going to react to crash retrieval. And then take it another step and say, well, these beings might have had a hand in all of religions and government and wars and the history of humanity. And by the way, here's a book called Gods of Eden. If you want to know what might be going on, read the book and call me tonight and we can talk about it. How do you think that would go over, Dave, if that hypothesis is accurate? I mean, I can't even imagine how you break that to the world. So that's why I think TTSA is here to slowly bring people along. I think that's what the goal is, because the longer I've spoken about this stuff, I missed it the first time. I listened recently. I think that's where TTSA is going. I think if you ask them these questions, because I don't know if anybody's asked them specifically what I just talked about, and maybe all of them have a disagreement. Maybe DeLong is alone in that belief that that's what's going on. He was told it's related to consciousness and negative emotions. They love negative emotions from us. That's what they told him. And one thing they can't handle is positive emotions like love and happiness. And people think that's new agey, and I understand that. But like I said, read slide 9 from ATIP. There's stuff that they can do, which is just mind blowing if you believe that slide. I keep saying it, people, but I put the slide up on Twitter. I pinned it to my Twitter, and nobody wanted to talk about it. I'm like, are you not reading this? Unless you think the people in ATIP just totally made that stuff up and they used it for funding. That's the only argument I could see, and that's possible. But when you see other sources talking about the same type of thing over the years, I think that slide is accurate. And go to Jay's site. He has a great article. I'll try to tonight. I will try to pin it again. I will pin his article so you could check out the slides that ATIP used in briefing members of the government. Allegedly, we don't know who they briefed. It might have been. Danny might know who it was if he's listening. Secretary, Deputy of Defense. I forget the exact title, and we don't have confirmation they were briefed. But if they were, they're probably freaking out too. They don't know. How do you tell the people? I don't know who wrote the book. Said how it's something about telling the people. It's such a conundrum. It's a challenge. Do you have any ideas on that? Because I don't know. It's beyond
me personally.
I don't know how you break that story.
I'm on the record saying
that's true.
I'm on the record as saying I do not believe for a second the government can tell the people. I really don't. I realize that's the unpopular answer, but I don't think the majority of the population, due to religion, due to personal beliefs, due to whatever it may be, I don't believe the population is anywhere near prepared for this potential story. All right, because it's going to scare people. It's going to, dude, look what happened. COVID is a great example, and maybe a horrible example, but a great example of how people have overreacted to a number of things. Okay, I'm not insulting the disease. I have a cousin who is working on the front lines of this and as a doctor, and he's a disease specialist, and I know this disease is real. Okay, but what I'm saying about this is toilet paper, milk, going crazy in supermarkets, like we're running out of food.
That's a great example. Yes.
All right. If all of a sudden we drop aliens, man, all right, that aliens are the next big story. This is huge for the sake of how people will react. And in my opinion, the public is not ready for this. We can't handle a pandemic, let alone something that is going to shift and alter the entire history of this story with extraterrestrial contact. I think it's a very dangerous game, and I could see why people at the Pentagon and the White House or wherever are not wanting to have this story go public. It just makes sense.
And when DeLong said that these people are patriots, these people have dealt with this for a long time. When I first heard that, I was angry. I'm like, you know what? You're just towing the government line. But now, the past week, I'm like, he's right. He's right. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them know a ton more of what's going on. And they realize, just like you said, people are not going to be able to handle this. And you're talking about extraterrestrial. I'm talking about something a lot deeper than that. So it's like, COVID craziness. And I agree. COVID is serious, totally serious. And it's really bad. It's getting bad again in Nevada. People are going to casinos with no mask. It's insane. But, people flooding the stores, like we're running out of food. And like you said, alien, crash retrieval, how are they going to react? And like I said, the bigger story is if my hypothesis is real, I don't know how they're going to tell it. I don't know how. I think TTSA is the only way to do it. You got to slowly bring them along, start out with the sightings, then get into a little more esoteric stuff. And in the end, I think eventually, DeLong talked about like 6 or 7 year plan. That's maybe what it's going to take, slowly bring people along, say it's going to take you. Look at me. It took, if what I'm thinking hypothesis wise is accurate, it took me 23 years to get to that point. Dave, 23 years from the beginning where I finally said, this is what I think is going on. To drop that on people who have never even looked into the subject and just drop it on them like a bomb and say, here you go. Everything would be chaos. So I do not envy the people in the position. And DeLong has spoken about how he first started talking about stuff, and they said people wanted to meet with him. I think it was Semivan, and he said, how do you know this stuff? You shouldn't know this stuff. And I'm sure they were freaked out. He's talking about this stuff, and if people start believing it, what kind of reaction is there going to be? Of course, people ignored him, like me. I ignored him early on, but I understand. I understand their concern. I understand holding the story back, and it's the biggest question we can face. And like I said, I don't want to be in their shoes. I can just share my information, and people can do what they want. They could look at it themselves, and then hopefully, over a period of years, it's going to take years for people to acclimate to this. Hopefully we could talk to them and say, hey, we still got football on Sunday, right?
No, so we don't. No, we don't.
No, I know. And I actually might work football in Vegas when it comes, but let's say football, people love their sports and whatever. And that comes back like, hey, we got football. We got this, we got TV. So these interdimensionals were screwing with humanity since the beginning of time and created religions and wars and all the poverty you see on this planet. So what? Come on, let's go out to dinner. I'm obviously being sarcastic. There's no way you could underplay that. You can't just blow that off. No, but you can have conversations with people. We can have gatherings. We can talk about it.
Well, you know what, though? I mean, I think the danger of it all right now is, even in its infancy with the subject, in infancy, I'm going back the last, say, 20 years, thanks to the internet. Okay, we have seen a multitude of people try and take advantage of this field. And this is what has got all people weary, whether it's people posting fake UFOs on YouTube, whether it's people posting false reports, whether it's people lying about their credentials, whether it's people who are just wanting to get some sort of 15 minutes of fame. And I think that the entire community, UFO community, is so jaded, as we got about a minute to go here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. I think the community is so jaded, they don't know what to believe anymore. They're grasping at straws, and all the straws are frayed at the bottom.
It's a big problem, and people are going to take advantage of this. That's why I like my blog and Danny's blog. We have Patreon supporters, but we don't charge for our information. We would love to do this full time because it takes that. I mean, I haven't worked since March. I work more now on this than I ever have, put 15, 16, 17 hour days in just trying to keep up with stuff. And, but we need to talk about, if my hypothesis is accurate, we need to talk about, consciousness and how can we deal with this? As humans, we really need to talk about consciousness and the abilities that we have that most of us don't even realize we have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My friend, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're going to go the distance. Don't tell Captain Shirk, but we're going to skip the news tonight because we got a heck of a lot more to do and say and ask Joe Murgia, our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. If you want to read his blog, and I highly suggest you do, and you check it on out, read it up, all right, it is ufojoe.net. He is one of many, many bloggers, writers, citizen journalists out there who are doing some fantastic work in this field. And you got to keep up to date because every day there seems to be something new. More Spaced Out Radio coming up as we continue right after the break. You're doing awesome, man.
Thanks. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit. I'm getting a little tired, but I definitely want to do this last half an hour. I want to talk about a little about remote viewing and, meditation and things people can do to, I mean, I want to bring up psychedelics in a way where I'm not telling people to do psychedelics. I could just say I learned stuff about, Graham Hancock talks a lot about ayahuasca, which I think is, I would love for everybody to do ayahuasca, but it's a really big thing. It's not like smoking pot, and I've never done drugs, but that one I would consider doing. I live in a city where one of the most respected ayahuasca, American ayahuasca, I forget the word they call them, but she's a practitioner. She's amazing. She's done over 1,000 ceremonies. She's just incredible. And I think it's like $400 for a 3-day ayahuasca in San Pedro. And it's not like you're doing drugs. You're not trying to get high. It's more opening your mind. It's a big deal. People need to read up on it before they even think about it.
Oh yeah. Well, it gives me another reason to go to Vegas. What the hell?
And then mushrooms is another thing. People talk about and LSD. I would never do LSD because it lasts so long. But there are people that have done it. And the guy who created the PCR DNA test, Kerry Mullis, who's dead now. Other people, the guy Francis Crick who discovered the double helix with Watson, he said he did it while he was on LSD. So those things are like a major creative, driving force for And I don't want to really. I know it's still a taboo to talk about drugs. Ecstasy is another thing. It's like Peter Jennings did a whole hour special on ABC News about ecstasy, and it was the most positive thing you will ever see. I think it was in the 2000s, early 2000s, and it's
Canadian
available
kid.
on YouTube.
Good Canadian kid, Peter Jennings.
It was amazing.
Yes.
Did a UFO documentary too, 2-hour special. UFOs believing, seeing is believing. It was really good. I mean, they had some skeptics I didn't want to see, but it was really good.
Did you know
up there with James Fox?
Did you know he worked for CBS, correct? I believe, or ABC, CBS or ABC? I think it was
he
CBS.
Worked for ABC.
Was it ABC?
ABC.
Did you know
ABC.
that for the longest time that ABC, when they hired Peter Jennings, that for the longest time for their investigative reporters, they absolutely refused to hire American reporters and only hired Canadian reporters because of the unbiased in the way that...
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's actually articles upon that. And that happened. I think that story came out around I think I was still in broadcasting school. So 1996 to 1998, it came out. Because they wanted more of a balanced news approach, that Walter Cronkite type style, and they couldn't find it because they had already seen the mainstream media stories or the American reporter stories always going very pro-American rather than calling the story down the middle. Now, I'm not trying to be insulting or anything. This is actually what was quoted. It was actually kind of...
How dare you, Dave?
I know. Bring the Canadians were invading for a while there. Then the entire media shifted. Thank you to CNN and the OJ trial. And there you have it.
OJ was a big deal for me. OJ was a huge deal for me. I was so obsessed with that trial.
Me
oh
too.
My God.
Me too. I
love trials. I don't know why.
Oh yeah.
The only time I turned down, I was working in Fort Myers, and they said, "Do you want to cover the William Kennedy Smith rape trial?" And I like, "Who's the reporter?" And they told me. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to pass." Oh, I did not like working with this reporter. Her father was a famous news anchor in New York. And I was like, nah, interesting story, but I cannot spend 3 days with her.
No, I don't blame you.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you stories some other time.
Oh, yeah. So we've got about just under 2 minutes here. 2 minutes.
The two things I really want to talk about is remote viewing consciousness and then that Bob Maguire story connected to Clinton, because Clinton has had an interest, and if there is a politician connected, it could be Clinton to this article. So
let's go there. We can do that.
Yeah, Clinton's the only one he's the only one that openly tried to get access to that. And it's a really great quote that I pulled up today. I'd never seen before. It's pretty cool.
I thought Obama tried as well.
No, not that we know about. I mean, he talked about it on Jimmy Kimmel, and he's like, "Yeah, the aliens won't let us." And Grant thinks that's an accurate quote. He laughs it off. Obama laughs it off, and maybe it is. I don't know, but I don't think presidents are even told about the good stuff. And I do think Trump knows what's coming. He has to. He cannot just spring this on the president. If members of Congress know, then Trump knows.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's one good thing. One good thing about Trump is, in theory, he would say, we're not putting up with a program that won't give us access to stuff that the taxpayers paid for, that we paid for. Opening it up now. Let's go. And what happens? What if he gets the National Guard say, let's find out where this? That's why I worry. What if these programs, they find out, we're coming for them, and they move this stuff? It's going to be hard to get to this stuff. But like I said, give them the blanket immunity, and we can get some magical stuff that
absolutely
be must see television.
All right. Let's go here. We're going to go in about 20 seconds here, 15 seconds. So let's continue on here if you don't mind. And kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'll pick it up. I'll just read from the blog a little bit. It's not long.
Sure. Here we go. Music is on. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you taking the time. I want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and our brand new Instagram page at Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, normally we get to the news at this time, but this whole UFO story has been like one giant news show today, and we're going to continue that. And I apologize to Captain Shirk because she hates when I do this. Hates it. And I don't give her the preparation to do so. But sometimes we've got to do it on the fly, and I'll take the heat for it. I definitely will. Joe Murgia is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His website is ufojoe.net, where you can read his blog, his writing, his research into the Wilson files and crash retrievals and everything to do with UFOs. Now, Joe, earlier today, on our Thought of the Dave, Science Bob, who everybody knows around here, Science Bob, he's in our chat rooms. He's been on the show a few times now. Bob Maguire is his name. Recently retired from the Faculty of Science and Mathematics at Virginia Tech University. Big UFO guy. And him and Captain Shirk, our news lady, were having a little bit of a debate on the UFO question of the day that we had, which is, what are your thoughts on the Wilson UFO documents? And something caught your eye there that Bob put out. What was that?
So I will read from the blog I have up there. It's marked Space Out Radio, so people can see it on my blog. And it starts out, I talk about a letter from 1995 where Miller is writing to Admiral Wilson. So there was an interest there. We don't know Wilson's response. So, it's basically Miller saying, I will give you a briefing. He doesn't say UFOs, but C. SETI and Dr. Greer are mentioned, so obviously it's about UFOs. And then later on, I say, well, in 1995, President Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have had a long interest in this subject. If you're into UFOs, you know that. So in January of 2018, Salon.com wrote an article, and they referred back to 1996. So Bill Clinton is in Ireland, and it says, just 3 years, I'm going to quote from the article, just 3 years earlier, while on a trip to Ireland where he was visiting a very troubled Belfast, Clinton read a letter he received from a child named Ryan who had asked him about what he knew regarding stories of a UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico. Clinton hadn't come to talk about UFOs. He was trying to make a point regarding how children can be victimized by political violence. In front of his Belfast audience, Clinton said to Ryan, "No, as far as I know, an alien spaceship did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. But then he added, to the delight of his audience, quote, "And Ryan, if the United States Air Force did recover alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know." So then the same month in the Daily Express, they talk about Webster Hubbell, who was Clinton's associate attorney general. So he went looking. This is a 1997 book. He went looking at the behest of Clinton. Clinton wanted to know about JFK, who killed JFK, and UFOs. And it says, Mr. Hubbell hit a brick wall at every turn. He was unable to find anything more about the death of JFK. And while he was able to get the disclosure of some files on U.S. interest in UFOs, there was no smoking gun evidence that aliens conspiracy theorists are seeking. Mr. Hubbell concluded that quote, secret government wing, unquote, holds such data that even the president is not privy to. Basically, that's what Wilson is talking about. So today on Facebook, I see a post. Bob Maguire, he says, and somebody else had commented, he said, that is not the most interesting thing I've read about the documents. He goes, the most interesting thing I've read is contemporaneous mail from Thomas Wilson to someone else confirming the meeting, Eric Davis, and the content of, I think it was Eric Davis, it could be the Greer meeting, but it says confirming the meeting and the content of the meeting before it was widely distributed. I think he's talking about, yeah, it's Davis. Here we go. So Wilson confirmed to somebody else in a mail that Bob saw the meeting and the contact before it was released, basically. And if I'm wrong, he can tell me. And then he says the other interesting thing to me is how long Joe Murgia has known Will Miller, Eric Davis, and known a lot of the story. Lots happening now. You know, we should pay attention. So I wanted to confirm with Bob. He was talking about the meeting between Davis and Miller, between Davis and Wilson, because if he read a letter from Wilson, that is game, set, and match. If you believe Bob, and you know him, he's credible.
Absolutely. Bob is very credible, and I would go to the nth degree in defending Bob in regards to his knowledge and his resume that shows that when he speaks, people should be listening, and when he types, people should be reading. Definitely agree with that. You know, in regards to Clinton, Grant Cameron has done some amazing work on, presidents and UFOs, as others have as well. This is a subject that every president needs to know or wants to know or is filled in on. Does it have to be a president that may be controversial enough, like Donald Trump? And I don't want to turn this political. Okay, but, just 2 weeks ago, we had Donald Trump's son interview him about UFOs. It doesn't matter whether you support Trump or are not a fan of his. We're talking about the UFO section where his son asks him about Roswell. What was your take on that? Because here we have a sitting president, and I was watching his body language, and I'm no expert on that. But the way he was smiling and his facial expression to me, he knew that question was coming. And he was going to have some fun with it. But to me, it looked like he knew something. What did you think?
He knows it's coming. He's getting out ahead of it a little bit. And he's going to, say, I kind of tried to tell you. He's going to try to use that to his advantage. He has to know. If congressional people know, then he knows. And I do think congressional people know. I heard that a couple of weeks ago. I was told certain people were briefed about crash retrieval. So if they were briefed, then he was briefed. So, how he reacts to the actual story is another case. I don't know. But back to the Clintons, I think, how big do people think it would be if either Bill or Hillary Clinton are on the record in that article? Is that a big deal on a crash retrieval article? Not, I don't know if either one of them probably doesn't know anything. They're not read into anything. But if they're adding their opinion in that article, I think that would be pretty big. So that's why I'm excited to see the article, because I don't know what's in it, but I've heard little rumors here and there about that.
That's the New York Times article you're talking about.
New York Times article. And as far as Trump, we joke that if there's anybody that's going to say, well, if they have a flying saucer and it belongs to the American people, let's go get it. This is nonsense. There's no such thing as as a special access program when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, whether or not anything like that happens, who the heck knows? It's I've said it to other people, it's a pipe dream to think that. But let's definitely get into consciousness and remote viewing.
Absolutely.
People are saying it online. Like, let's talk about it. So back in, I think it was 96, I heard about Courtney Brown. He wrote about remote viewing, and that turned into a big debacle with the whole Hale-Bopp comet and Heaven's Gate. And they said they were remote viewing a UFO by the comet, and then they all committed suicide. It was a debacle. It was all on Art Bell, and it was horrible. But I stayed with it, and I took a class with Lynn Buchanan in 97, and I took another class, and I discovered for myself that it's legitimate. And basically, it's just your psychic abilities. They call it PSI. It's basically a way to bring out those abilities. There's a certain method you follow that they came up with, Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann. It's just little things that you do, tapping on your paper, speaking out loud, and you get information. It just pops into your head, so you write it down. And I had enough information to say, you know what? There's no way I should have known that unless the information is coming through a sixth sense. Now, my stuff wasn't that impressive. The people who I did it with, my first wife, she's a natural psychic, so she had impressive. Some of the stuff she came up with was amazing. But some of the best remote viewers, they come up with so much information. So that's something in the future. People need to look into meditation and remote viewing and just exploring consciousness, and a controversial subject. If you look into Graham Hancock, he's written a lot about ayahuasca and mushrooms. Those are really important issues. I think people, it's been demonized over the years, but it's a way to expand awareness. And I've never done any of that stuff, but I've read about it. And I think Graham Hancock has done ayahuasca like 8, 9, 10 times. And it's just amazing. He thinks every politician should do it, which would be, it would be great. Imagine that. I can't imagine some of those politicians doing it, but it would be great to watch.
Well, up here, we
show.
think there are
Imagine
already a few doing that.
Yeah, it's very possible. So yeah, remote viewing. It's really funny because, and then there's so much that we don't know about human beings that I think we have abilities. I think a lot of this is about abilities we have that we have no idea. That's like one of the things. I'm not Christian, but one of the things Jesus said is, you could do these things and more. And I think that's our future. And I'm not talking about 5-10 years. I think in the distant future, that's what humanity will become. And, it's really, I love looking into that stuff. That's a big part of it. A lot of people are nuts and bolts and they hear consciousness and remote viewing and they reject it. And I'm like, just do it. First of all, if you're going to reject remote viewing, first try it yourself, because, you'd be amazed what you come up with. And, we were just worried about what the Russians were doing. So that's why we did our program. We wanted to see, because we heard they had a program. And Dave, if you look, people should see Third Eye Spies. And one of the most amazing remote viewers was Pat Price. And, he's dead now, and people think he might have been killed. He was amazing, though. Him and Ingo Swann to come up with this program. Him and Ingo Swann and Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ to come up with what they came up with was just incredible. I mean, that alone should get, Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann. He's dead now, but they should get some award for what they did. It's just amazing. When you look at the system of remote viewing, controlled remote viewing. It's just incredible. It's so in depth what they came up with, how you can get that information out, whether it's through your subconscious or whatever. How we don't know how it works, but there's other things. This healing. I never was into healing. That's one of my favorite subjects now. And there's a guy called, people need to look this up, William Bankston. He's done over 20 experiments with mice, and his healing method, they inject the mice with cancer, which is highly controversial. They give them mammalian cancer, and they do this technique that he learned from a psychic who's now dead. And the mice are supposed to live 27 days with this cancer. The tumor gets large, and then they die. It just crushes their organs. Well, with his method, when they do it, and they have a control group too that does not get healed. They just pick these students at a college. It's done in a university, and he teaches them the method. They do it for an hour over the cage, and the mice live their full lifespan. That should not happen, Dave. There's no drugs involved. They die at 27 days. That's the longest they will live with this kind of cancer. They're living their full lifespans. The control mice are dying. But this is the weird part. If the healers decide they want to peek in on the control mice, just look at them for 10, 15 minutes. Hey, where are those control mice? They get near them, those mice are healed. And people are like, this is insane. I'm telling you, look into his research. He's all about data. He's a sociologist and a statistician. He's amazing. I took his class a couple of weeks ago. I learned his method. It's not that hard. I could teach somebody in a half an hour. I'm not going to do it here. In the future, one of my YouTube videos, I'll teach it. And it's a healing method. And you want to get more woo, it's a manifesting method. And Dave, I have used this method, and I had some really interesting stuff happen. I want to get back into remote viewing. So I started doing this method. It's one of the things I wanted to get. Like 3 days later, I'm talking to somebody who lives in Vegas, a known remote viewer. And she goes, by the way, would you like to take my remote viewing class for free? I have an opening. You could just take it for free. I'm like, yes. So coincidence or not, I have a free remote viewing coming to me. And I wanted to do it because I dropped the ball again. I did it I had 2 teachers and I did it, but I did not practice. I did not stay with it. You need to practice. So I want to start doing that again. So now that I have that offer, I will start doing it, and I'm going to stick with it and see what I can come up with. But the healing, Dave, it's amazing. He's such a down-to-earth guy. Bankston, his lectures are online. His interviews, he's interviewed by Jeffrey Mishalov. That's one of the better interviews. And like I said, in a laboratory with controlled conditions. His work with Dean Radin. He works with Dean Radin. He's a very respected parapsychologist. Amazing what they're coming up with. And I could talk about him for hours. His books, both of them audiobooks, they're great. He talks about the story of how he learned this and the psychic that he met. And like I said, a lot of people said, oh, this is woo-woo, but he has the data. For him, it's all about data. And the most he'll say when he says, you know what, this mice is healed of cancer. We take the blood out of that mouse, and then we inject it into another mouse. We give that mouse cancer, and that other mouse is now immune because it got blood from the healed mouse. So he's like, that's interesting. That's an interesting result. That's what he usually says. It's interesting. And it's the worst. It's a secret. Nobody wants to talk about it. I'll post it on Twitter. I will get no reaction from people whatsoever. It's really, it's a little frustrating because like I said, I never was into healing because I thought there was no data for it. There's no evidence for it. But then I stumbled upon Bankston. I worked in Houston a couple of years ago on a show, and a production assistant said, hey, have you ever heard of Bill Bankston? And next thing you know, it's like, this guy's amazing. How do I not know about this guy? And when Hal Puthoff was in Vegas a couple of years ago and he got this award, Bankston was on the stage handing him the award. I didn't get to go to the conference, but he's like one of my favorite researchers. He should be having so much publicity, and he's basically ignored because it's too much for people. UFOs, okay. Healing, not okay. And he talks about the boggle factor. People like UFOs. But then they start getting into the consciousness. Nope, too much. Well, then the people who like consciousness, then you start talking about healing. Nope, that's too much. There's like a different level for everybody. They have issues of what's not acceptable to them. Bigfoot, okay. Bigfoot with psychic phenomena? Nope. Bigfoot and UFOs? Nope. Just Bigfoot. So it's like that, and that's everything you could take about it. And Knapp and Kelleher talk about that in Hunt for the Skinwalker. There's like everybody. It's my stuff is good, but all that other stuff is woo-woo. It's nonsense.
Joe, we're going to get to the thought of the day. I'm going to get you to stick around here because it's always a lot of fun, and it kind of involves the Wilson documents. I thought you'd have some fun with it, so let's get to that. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. There's our great music. Okay, Joe, only you and YouTube can hear me. I'm just going to introduce it, and then I'm going to bring you in, okay?
Okay.
Here we go. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Day is as follows. What's your thoughts on the Wilson UFO documents? And Joe, we had some interesting responses today from people that we're going to get your reaction to as well. So we're going to start off on Twitter, where Marty says, I am keeping an open mind while waiting for the next shoe to drop, while he posts a Canadian clown. Thank you, Marty. Chris, because of who has put their necks out on the line to stand by them and their backstories, I can't dismiss them. All these hints about a new New York Times article by people who have been right in the past, I can't dismiss that either. There's no need to fight over it regardless. We do got to come together, don't we, Joe?
We really need to get I'm guilty of it too online, but for the most part, we need to, not just as a community, as a country, as a world. I don't know, I can't envision it right now, but I know it's utopian. But if we're battling something that doesn't have our best interests at heart, we really need to come together. And it's like That's another thing, Dave. When Reagan said, how we would come together if we faced a threat from outer space, as a species, we would come together. Clinton said the same thing. I never knew that. Clinton said the same thing. And I have the quote. I have to put it out on Twitter. It's like, and he got lambasted for saying it. So it's easier to say. Whether or not we can do it, I don't know. I guess that's why we're going to have to collect evidence to show people whatever. Like I said, that's my theory. That's my hypothesis. If it's not right, then if it's just extraterrestrial, not that big of a deal. We can just slowly acclimate to it.
All right.
I don't know if I have faith in us as humans, and I put myself in that, to come together. But let's hope things change. I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Jules says, must admit, it excites me. Not as much as your hair, though. Make sure you give that mane a sexy shake tonight, Dave. So there you go, Julie. There you go. Oh, it's feeling nice, smooth, silky tonight. All right, Tim. More muddying of the waters. The U.S. government strikes again at disinformation. Very sad. That's somebody, and Tim's a good guy. He listens to us all the time. There's a guy who's tired of the wool being pulled over the eyes, and we talked about that, Joe.
I don't, I never, it's not an issue with me. Like, I understand not letting the information out. So I do get frustrated because, supposedly there's dozens of videos, and I get frustrated that early on we thought they were going to be released and then they weren't. So I don't know if that's going to happen here. I'm thinking not. It's the president drives it, so I have to hope that he please, as a distraction from all the other stuff that's going on, just push for the open hearings. And the immunity, that's the key, Dave. We need immunity for these people in these programs. I don't think it's a question of disinformation at this point. I mean, yeah, it's always a possibility. You never know. You never know if Wilson was lied to by this program manager, but I don't think that's the case. But we're gonna know stuff really soon. That's the great part about this. We don't have to wait years or months. If the New York Times gets beat to the punch, then we'll know from somebody else what's going on. I think the Times will eventually do it, but They have to be scrambling right now. They have to be nervous that somebody else is gonna scoop them.
Absolutely.
The New York Post was supposed to do something today. I don't know if they did it or not.
All right, we'll get to a couple more here before we got to start taking this home. Bob Maguire, Science Bob, says, I believe there is sufficient evidence that the meeting was held, and I cannot figure out what Eric Davis would get from lying. I lean towards accepting the meeting and the contents, which are still unverified, because we want the SAPs, not just their existent. Gail, my opinion is the documents are true and accurate. The material strikes me as being written by someone who wanted to make the meeting to be recalled in all its details. I have known people to do that when they consider the information to be of great significance and importance. Final word on Twitter goes to, our good friend Alcatraz Juan. How is a basketball floating in the ocean relevant to UFO documents? Thank you to everybody participating in the Thought of the Day. We will do it again tomorrow on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you so much to Captain Shirk who put the news together, which we will read tomorrow, and to UFOJoe.net, Joe Murgia, for coming on in and breaking down the Wilson files. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thaw rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everybody participating in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, Spreaker, the Space Travelers Club on our website, Revolution Radio, Facebook, LGAB, and to the Snarkers and Snarkettes on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, make a mistake, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Remember, everybody, the Woo train may have docked for the night, but tomorrow we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we have room for them too. Good night. All right. There we go.
Are we off everywhere?
We're off.
Okay. Good. I'm hungry.
Oh, I don't blame you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. That was good.
No problem, man. No problem. All right.
The more I do, the better I'll get.
Yeah. All right, let's stop this. And thanks, we're done there. There we go. Close that off. And yeah, man, thank you for a great show, bud. I really appreciate that. Really,
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And
nice having a professional host.
Well, you had a professional one the other day. I'm just the wannabe, man. I'm just the wannabe.
No, you're really good. Yeah, George is great, but you helped me. It was easy for you, and I do like just being me.
Yeah,
it's
bro.
It's easier.
Yeah,
I can
bro.
focus better.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk soon. You go get some sleep, man. Thank you for a long night.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Joe Murgia, everybody. Give him a clap. Joe Murgia. Oh, God. That feels good to get those off. Hoo-wee. Now, I have to figure out how the hell my microphone went off in the extra. Oh, frig. I don't know when it went off. I don't get it. Now, you wouldn't have heard that on YouTube because we have a direct feed in there. But, Joe did well tonight. I mean, considering it's his second real long form interview, he did very well tonight. Very well. And I mean it. Like, if this was a year ago, I would have never had him on the show. I thought he was the biggest jerk out there, one of the biggest jerks out there. But you know what? His work, his research, and this is probably the most important piece of advice I could give. We like to judge people in this field by how they tweet, by how they respond, and by how they do things on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But this is where we got to get back to the old school stuff, man, of actually talking to people and taking the time to have that conversation in a civilized way, because that's what happened with Joe and I. And I'll tell you, man, the guy is solid. He's a good dude. And over the last number of months, I've really seen that. And, I think I could call him a friend now. And I really am appreciative of that. All right. I really am. And, we need to get stronger with that. Right. We really do need to get stronger with that. So, just the way it is. Right. So I think we're, if we take the time to talk to people and it works better for us. It does, it does very well. It does very well for what we're doing. So good on him. Good on him for doing that. All right, we got to download the show. And now, I had to figure this shit out. Anyways, solid show. Anyways, let's move on. What am I doing here? Download. All right, we're going to download this sucker now. I'll be right back, people. Be right back. Appreciate all you tuning on in. I'll be right back so we can chat as we normally do. All right, be right back. I've actually opened up the window in here, trying to get some cool air. Hopefully too many mosquitoes don't fly in. All right, let's download this, buddy. I don't know what happened there at the end. Kind of weirded out by that. So just so you know, we now have 2 WeTransfer verification codes. So we're going to be using those, okay? So when you put in your verification code for the show, make sure you do it twice, 2 numbers now. It's actually kind of awesome. Chuck from our radio station in Ridgecrest, California. He's actually going to. He was playing us live, but he's moving us to a different time slot between midnight and 3. And the reason why he's doing that is because he's got KZFX, where we broadcast out of, actually broadcasts heavily into like places like China Lake, where there's a lot of the secret stuff going on. And he's got a number of people who've reached out to him who work the night shift there, who want to listen to the show while they're on shift. So he's moved it for them. So that's kind of cool, actually. It's really kind of cool. So we're having to do that now. And all right. And so great show tonight, though. Like I know I say that often and everything like that, but Joe nailed it out of the park tonight. He really did nail it out of the park. And good on him for that, man, because he's not used to doing this stuff. And I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Joe was great tonight. And I think we all learned a lot. We really did learn a lot tonight. And I think it was fantastic. It was a great radio tonight, solid information. And look, you don't have to believe what he says, or you don't have to believe what any of our guests say. That is still always up to you. I just bring the information, and it's up to you whether you want to believe or not. But I think Joe is onto something here. I'm excited about his research. And look, he has his critics, okay? Like Lieutenant Tim McMillan, who will be on this show in a couple of weeks. He's not fully convinced. John Greenwald with the Black Vault isn't fully convinced. And there's kind of this tete-a-tete between a lot of these guys who are researching right now. And I think that we need to remember that everybody's doing their best in order to try and bring the field and as much information together. They're all working for the same cause, just at different angles. And that's one thing we got to remember through all of this. And I think the right answers are going to be a hybrid between what they all tend to figure out and find out. That's my opinion. And like I said, there's some stuff I don't agree with when what Joe is saying, about this being nefarious and things like that. And him and I will talk about that. We've talked about that on the phone and whatever. But his research is showing that. My personal experiences, what I go by a lot on this, show differently. So that's where it gets a little bit interesting with things. All right. So, you know, we just go with it, man. We just go with it. All right. See if I can turn this into a... what do I do? Wants me to turn this into an MP3. Let me Google this here. Okay, I have this program. Where do I find it here? Files. Okay, let's save that. But let's see if we can convert that to MP3. The question is, where is it? Output format. All right, let's look for this. So we save it. Where is the output format on here? See if we can do that. Open. Yes. Next. All right. Fuck. Okay. God damn it. Okay. So how do we drop a file into here? That would be how. Maybe we can do it all together here. Hold on, let's just do this. May work easy. All right, this may not be as hard as I think it is. What are you talking about there, Shanna? Hi, Zachary. How you doing? Yeah, we'll bring Joe back. Definitely, Dirty Filth. We will definitely bring Joe back. He is a good friend of the show, and I have no problem bringing him back in order to make things work. I think it's a great addition to have him be a part of things. So. AZAX2. Copy. Oh, trust me, I'm. You know what? When we first started the whole editing process, for after the show, I actually would turn the feed off and say, "Okay, guys, good night. I got to get to work here and get this editing done." And then it just kind of morphed. I kind of thought about it, and I was like, "Well, why don't we just continue to hang out? Because I'm sitting here bored. It's not like I could play music while I'm doing this." So I just figured, you know what? Let's just keep it going and chat. We're all here having a good time and having fun. And why not just continue it, right? I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody. So that's kind of how this whole thing got started, where I'm editing and you guys are here chatting away because, hey, I mean, you guys are, maybe some of you guys don't want to go to bed or you're having fun talking to friends. And the minute I say good night, the chat room shuts up and it shuts down. So it's just one of those little things that I like to do because I know you guys like to chat and you guys like to have your own conversations while I'm sitting here doing work, and I could butt in when I need or say a bunch of nonsensical stuff. And so that's kind of how that goes. I mean, but I enjoy it. I think you guys do. So let's just continue with what works. It's nice and simple. Nice and simple. Mm-hmm. If you guys don't mind hanging out, hey, I don't mind keeping it open. Ah, thank you. Thank you, fitness girl. It was kind of cool, though, having Sean Cahill and Grant Cameron in the chat room tonight. That was really cool. Really cool. Hey, Overbuilt, how you doing? SOR 6. Copy that. Right, so we got that going. So let's get the okay, verification code time, please. Good night, Teresa. Verification code time. And let's see if we can delete this. Remove. Oh, that's going to be cool. I think that's going to work just fine. All right, so let's select this file here. Okay, transfer code, verification code number 1 is... Where is it here? Why hasn't it come yet? $303,433. 303,433. And verification code number 2 is... let me see here. All right, verification code number 2 is 640583. 640583. All right, so now we got that done. Now we got to go over here. We got to delete this one here. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to convert these files. Open. Maybe it will only do one at a time. I don't know. All right. See how long this takes. Because now for my one radio station now, they let me know right before showtime that I needed to convert them to MP3. So I had to quickly download a program and figure that out. The verification code is to help send the audio to the radio station, Zach. So let's move. Get that out of the way there. Put this over here. It's a good show. Very good show. Happy UFO Day, by the way. For World UFO Day, whatever it's called. So I wonder what happens to these. Where do they go when they're done? Save to file. Oh, that's kind of cool. Well, this is actually quite fast. All right, Dirty Filth. Talk to you later, buddy. That was a great show. We almost broke the record tonight. Almost. I think we topped out at like 164. Okay, so where do these go? Are these in the file now? Is that where they go? Or they're converting right now? Are these... I don't know. Where the fuck did they go? They go in the file? Is that where they went? Okay, saved it to file. So those should all be MP3 now. Oh, darn it. Save to folder, SOR media. Do I have an SOR media folder? I don't know. Shoot. Oh, save to file KZAX. There we go. Okay, so they are. All right, I think we're good here. Conversion complete. All right, let's go like this. And let's get these files dropped here. Upload. Desktop. Oh my God. Well, hopefully that shortens out. Hey, Bomber. Thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate that. I'm done with Twitter for the night. Apparently we have 25 minutes left in this. But that's moving awfully quick. Maybe it'll be faster. It's 12:31 here. Where's the other two doing? 42%, 50%. All right. This is the most boring part because I literally don't know what to do. That's because you got aliens, Joe. Whatever's out there, Joe already knows you're there. So the flashlight wouldn't really, excuse me, matter. You totally have aliens. Tell us about the coins moving, Joe. Tell us about the coins. Good night, Shanna Banana. Hey, Chemical, good to have you here. Show is awesome, man. You missed a gooder. I am beat all of a sudden. I got to sleep in today. It was more than once, Joe. It's more than once. Once. Come on. Bah. Who's on Instagram that's not following us yet? Just out of curiosity. Yes, there was that one time. I remember that, Joe. That was nuts when that happened. I remember how freaked you were. You had aliens that night, my friend. You went for a ride. Hey, Bug, what's happening, man? Thanks for joining us. We still got 85 people here sitting around doing sweet FA, man. Sweet FA. What do you guys want to talk about? Since we're still downloading, apparently. See, my night just got longer. Oh, excuse me. Good to know I put you to sleep there, Bug. Holy shit. Okay, the coin experiment that Joe used. In one of my first years on Blog Talk Radio, in my first year of broadcasting, this show, pardon me, one of my guests suggested that if you think you're being contacted or taken by extraterrestrials, a good way to know is to put coins on your nightstand or your dresser or somewhere in your bedroom. And the theory behind it is that one sec. The theory behind it is that if you get taken, you manifest and you put it out to either the extraterrestrials or to the extraterrestrials that when you get back, that either they move the coins or you move the coins when you get back. So that way you know if you've been taken. So for instance, if you have, let's take these mouse pad or these mouses, whatever the fuck they're called, okay, as coins. So maybe you start them on your nightstand side by side like this, but then you put it out there like, okay, if I'm taken tonight, I want to see them stacked by the time I get back or when I wake up in the morning, just so I know that I was gone. So you start them off like this, and then you want them stacked, or you start them stacked and you hope that they go like this, whatever it may be. You can do it any way you want. And so I have had 5 people, including Joe, in the chat room who thought there may have been some things going on and weren't sure, who woke up the next morning and actually had the coins move. And they weren't sure if they were taken that night or not, or the previous night or not. And when they woke up, the coins moved. So that's kind of what the coin experiment is. Now, I could say for me, I used 2 poker chips and they never moved. They've never moved for me. But that's me. I don't have any on my nightstand right now, but I kind of know when they take me because I get little signs. So that's kind of what that is. So give it a try. If you think you got some aliens, give it a try. See if it works. It does not work, FAP, if you go into a vending machine in a hotel because you're drunk. And yes, I've done that before. Not gonna lie, old Davey's done that before. And grabbed a cup full of ice so I could chew on ice to get some moisture back in my body. Oh yeah, I've done that. Who hasn't? Who hasn't done that? Who hasn't got a little bit of aliens there? The coins move, Chemical, because you put it out there. So before you go to bed, you kind of give a little bit of a meditation, basically saying, hey, if I'm going to be abducted tonight, please let me know or let me have a sign by the coins. So if the coins are side by side, you know, you ask, hey, when I get back, can you, Mr. and Mrs. Alien, please stack them? Or have me stack them when I get back. What do you want to investigate, Zach? You should have food shamed her, Bomber. Should have food shamed her. Woke up in the morning with 3 huge bleeding scratches from my ankle up to my thigh. Then noticed the stack of coins were knocked over. Later that day, I went out and checked my game cameras. One of my game cameras was fried. Joe, didn't you send that game camera off back to the company, and they said they'd never seen a camera do that before? That happened quicker than I thought. All right, everybody. I am done like dinner. I shall be getting out of here. I shall be moving on to other topics of discussion, like how comfortable is my bed right now? I want to say a big thank you to everyone who, excuse me, who came in tonight, especially if you're new. Yes, I would love to go to a Guar concert. Absolutely, I'd be in for a Guar concert. But tomorrow night on the show, we have Marilyn Hughes talking about out-of-body experiences. And then Friday night, we have peak woo time. The woo train will be full for our Keith Andrews. So let's have a good night. We'll see you all tomorrow. I'm going to go get some rest. You should too, as it's nice and early in the morning. And some of us got to be up for work because some of us are stupid enough to work 2 full-time jobs. If you know anybody like that, please let me know and give them a good shaking. Anyways, much love to you all. Thank you to everybody who participated in the super chat.